FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher, reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organisations have sued, calling the rule issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration an overreach of government authority. Because there are challenges to the rule in multiple circuit courts, the cases can be consolidated and heard by one federal appeals court chosen by lottery.
Meanwhile, in the UK, staff working on the front lines of England's National Health Service have been told they must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Staff will be given until April of next year to get both vaccine doses before jabs are made compulsory. From FSN's London bureau, Laura Macon-Isherwood reports.
More than 80,000 NHS workers in England are unvaccinated. The Health Secretary Sajid Javid says the measures being introduced will avoid preventable harm and protect patients. The rules will apply in England only, though, and will have to get parliamentary approval. There will also be exemptions permitted for specific medical reasons.
Also in Britain today, a fresh argument about whether members of Parliament should be allowed to have second jobs. It's been revealed that Geoffrey Cox, a lawmaker with Boris Johnson's governing Conservative Party, spent part of the COVID lockdown working as a lawyer in the Caribbean. He cast his votes in Parliament by proxy and may not have broken any rules. But pollster Chris Curtis says the taint of scandal is now impacting the government's popularity.
What we had seen was an increase in the number of people who said that they described Boris Johnson as corrupt and also as the Conservative Party as corrupt. In both cases, nearly half the population think that's a correct description now.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the clarion warning issued on Monday by the World Food Programme, predicting an imminent catastrophe in Afghanistan. David Beasley, the head of the WFP, said the country is on the brink of the worst humanitarian situation on Earth, with 23 million people inexorably heading towards starvation. It will, he said, be hell. Shelley Thakral of the World Food Programme expanded on what her boss had to say about the urgent need for international support.
He spoke so passionately and said, shame on you, world. Shame on you, world, for all the billions of the trillions of money that we have. And yet, children, you're seeing children who are starving, who are undernourished, who are underweight, even families who've had to sell children. I have no words for it. The desperation is that we need money. We need $220 million a month to feed people until the end of the year. And then 2022, we take stock.
The crisis has been sparked not just by political uncertainty with the Taliban back in charge, but by Afghanistan's recent drought and its impending winter. Since the fall of the government headed by President Ashraf Ghani, many Western nations have suspended aid operations in Afghanistan, but the WFP says that is no longer an option if disaster is to be averted. The main news again, the European Commission is accusing Belarus of gangster-style tactics in a border standoff that has left at least 7 migrants dead. The Biden administration is appealing against a federal judge's ruling suspending the imposition of a vaccine mandate for private companies with more than 100 employees. And staff working on the front lines of England's NHS have been told they must be fully vaccinated against COVID or lose their jobs. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Researchers were able to successfully teach a father how to communicate his emotions with rudimentary hand gestures. The stunning development happened after Stanford researchers spent 9 months trying to train 42-year-old Pittsburgh father Ron Myers to express simple sentiments like pride and love in a way few thought possible. To conduct the study, researchers used large, simplistic diagrams depicting hand gestures a dad might use to show emotion in a way Ron could easily comprehend.
We would often leave Band of Brothers or 30 for 30 reruns on to help him stay comfortable.
When Ron was able to successfully identify an emotion, he was given rewards to reinforce good behavior, including buffalo wings or a moment to read a page of a Tom Clancy novel. Despite Ron's breakthrough, researchers say he still has a way to go before achieving full emotional maturity, as after several months of work with Ron, he still retreats to the corner of the lab to look up drywalling techniques on the internet whenever his real family drops by to see him.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to call in, take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 is the call line if you'd like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Conan.
And I've heard, I thought a lot of people in relationships typically fight about money and materialistic things like that. And that tends to be why I avoid fights in relationships. But I've got a new one. A third of couples have admitted to having arguments about which one of them is greener or better for the climate, more sustainable than the other.
What poll? What city did they poll? I don't believe this.
It was a study of 2,000 adults in a relationship. It doesn't specify beyond that, but 2,000 adults found that 30% have fallen out over one of them being better or worse at being green than the other. And that's up there in the dumbest reasons I've ever heard for couples to argue. But having poor eco habits is now a major turnoff too, apparently, with almost a fifth of respondents admitting they've either broken up or considered breaking up with someone because they're not sustainably conscious enough.
Why didn't you throw this in the compost heap?
And 22% have been pulled up on their poor eco behavior by their other half, with men more likely to be to blame, 32%, than women, 14%.
Now, I will admit, I have teased Bonnie on occasion about leaving all the lights on in the house. But that really doesn't have as much to do with being green as it does the bill.
Yeah, that's what Arya said right off the bat. Yeah. Couples fight over money.
Yeah.
And that's teasing, not fighting.
Yeah, I really don't care. I just tease her a little bit.
I would.
Oh, were you born in a barn? That kind of thing.
People who leave the windows open in the winter, leave all the lights on. No. Yeah, I would fight about that in a heartbeat.
Speaking of lights, though, it did emerge that 69% of women turn off lights in rooms no one is using, compared to 56% of men.
Oh, that's interesting.
So apparently, yeah, I that's the opposite of what I would expect too, because, I mean, at least the general mythology is the dad is the character always running around, turning off lights, turning down the heat and all of this other stuff. But in reality, it's women going around.
I want to know who is more likely to leave a window ajar to let a little cool fresh air in when it's friggin' 30 degrees outside.
Well, in a lot
Who does that?
In a lot of families, they say, at least they, meaning like people that study spending habits and things like that, they say that women hold the purse strings. So it's the women who make big decisions about whether to buy a car or whether to, or just paying the bills, that kind of thing. Even though the dad or the man in the house might be making more money, might be the breadwinner, she's the one that makes the decisions.
But wait a minute, I thought all inequality and whatnot.
Yeah.
What's going on here? But that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense to me 20 years ago. I don't know if that still stands.
I think it depends on how you cut the stats. Some sources say that women make 73% of what men make, but if you look at women in comparable positions, they tend to make the same amounts. I'm not sure there's data to support both sides of the
And when
argument.
you consider how many single mothers are out there, has that messed with the statistics there? Being that you have women basically living off of child support and or Big Daddy government, and they're making all the decisions, but there isn't a man involved.
I was talking about ones in which there are
actual
both.
couples.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is dealing specifically with people who are in relationships. Here's another one. While 59% of women clean out jars and plastic bottles before they go into the recycling, just 43% of men said the same. I don't even have recycling.
I haven't had recycling for years. Ever since I saw the Penn and Teller BS episode about it, I totally walked away from it.
I've never actually seen it, but I've heard stuff about recycling, how it doesn't really help or anything, and it seems to make sense.
I recycle everything.
Yes, but you recycle it personally, right?
You're using it around the house, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean,
do you have the bins?
I don't have the bins.
That's
I take my garbage to the dump personally.
Gotcha.
I don't pay anyone to do it for me. The reason I recycle is because I can basically get away with a $2 bag of garbage like every 4 months.
So you're doing it because it's subsidized.
Correct. It is, but I have
meaning that when you go to the dump, if you didn't recycle, you'd have to pay the transfer fee per pound for everything you're throwing away. But if you recycle, you don't have to pay for those.
I don't have to pay for anything I recycle. I don't have to pay for because it is being subsidized. Now I have asked up and down. The guy swears that it's not going straight to China where they can just throw it off their boat into the water, which is what they've probably been doing for the last 30 years. He says it's going to Indiana or something, and it actually is being recycled. But who knows what he really knows.
Well, what you will learn, if I recall, it's been, 15 years since this episode came out for the Penn and Teller BS show. This was back when Penn and Teller were libertarians. And
the good days.
Yeah, what you will learn is that most of the things that the government wants you to recycle are actually losers as far as the energy required to process the recycling of those things.
Yes.
So if the whole idea behind recycling is to save energy or whatever on making new products, then it's actually a total loss in most cases. With a couple of exceptions, they do point out that aluminum is worth recycling.
Most metals, actually.
And they point out, what was the other one? There was like one other thing that might actually be worth doing, but paper, plastic, the stuff is not worth doing, and that's the bulk of what gets recycled. And they say that the reason you can tell that aluminum's worth doing something with is they'll actually pay you for it.
Mm-hmm.
The market
the free market says
that's worth it.
Yeah, most municipalities don't even recycle. They've just taken all that stuff and they're just burying it out in a big hill, which, by the way, when you consider how much trash you can put in a trash heap, you could really stack it.
That's the other thing they say is like landfills are actually fine. Like they point out that, first of all, there's barely any of them as far as square mileage or whatever of the country, and that even the ones that there are, there's usually plans for them where they, like, once they're totally full, they turn them into like golf courses.
Well, ours has vents where they're actually venting out all of that heat. There were talks. Now, this would have been a waste of money of turning that into some kind of an aquaculture situation where they would be able to warm the water and warm the greenhouses and stuff. And that was a
boondoggle.
It would have been a boondoggle for sure. It was some grant stealers looking for federal money to make that happen.
This is an industry that is dominated by governments, so for the most part, it is they're scratching their buddies' backs.
See, I never heard anything about recycling and energy consumption or anything like that. I always thought the point of recycling was to minimize the amount of trash going into the landfills. I didn't think it had any purpose beyond that.
Which that alone is completely overblown. They go into the history of the recycling program. It goes back to the 1980s, and it was essentially the EPA. It was the EPA Make Work program that was just an excuse to create government jobs.
Makes sense. And the other reason the Greenies will bring up is that you are basically wasting, in some cases, non-renewable resources, such as glass and metals and stuff. You basically just burying out in the backyard. You're not really getting rid of it. I mean, I guess you could. Wouldn't that be something? 50 years from now, you actually have specialists who go to these landfills and they specialize in digging up old trash to recycle all of those precious metals and glasses and stuff. I don't think it'll ever come to that, but that's the other reason you recycle, is because it's wasteful. But as Ian mentioned, when you consider it's just like minting pennies. When it costs more to mint a damn penny than it does that the penny is actually worth, you have to think about what you're actually doing. Is this actually cost effective?
I get recycling on a personal level. Like if I buy a bottle of water, I get the point of keeping the bottle and refilling it, because then you're just refilling a bottle of water for free instead of paying
you're being
another.
Frugal in that case.
I don't even know if that would be frugal. It's just not.
It is frugal.
Not reckless with money. I don't know if it would qualify as
I've
being
done that
frugal.
before. I've done it to the point where the bottle gets a little funky and then you have to throw it out.
They start to degrade or rot or something,
well, it's
right?
just, there's... Yeah, as you're drinking from that thing, unless you're sanitizing it with like a dishwasher or something every single time, there's gonna be some germs that are gonna build up on that thing. So you got to toss it out after a few uses.
Regardless of where you stand on climate change and recycling and being green, though, don't let it destroy your relationships, your friendships, or your romantic relationships. That's silly. Be adults about this. But what are your thoughts? Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe this is a bigger deal, and you should determine your partners based on how into recycling they are. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to join. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. And the Bitbox is a 100% open source wallet that mitigates a lot of the problems that hardware wallets sometimes have, and that's why we're giving one away here on Free Talk Live. All you have to do is subscribe to our Odyssey channel at video.freetalklive.com and then toot a screenshot of your subscription to me on our social media server, which you can find at social.freetalklive.com. We'll be choosing a winner at random using some methodology that we haven't even come up with on an upcoming episode of Freer Talk Live. That's video.freetalklive.com and social.freetalklive.com. Or you can just buy one directly at box.freetalklive.com. I need to rewrite this because that's a lot of freetalklive.com in there. But anyway, we are giving one away, and it's going to be fun. I like doing stuff like this. So
it's a $150 hardware wallet. I just checked the price on Amazon.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, you can get 5% off if you go to box.freetalklive.com and use code FTL.
That's the way to do it.
Absolutely. Knock some of that price off. Let's go to the phones. We have Major Payne calling from Michigan. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live.
All right. Thanks. I guess first I'll touch on this recycling fiasco you guys are talking about, as far as it takes more energy to reproduce it than it does, than the viability of the end product. Myself, I got a tax bill, my property taxes, and they bang me for so much for a recycling bin down the road that I don't even use.
They include a recycling bin in your property taxes?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a recycling bin down here at Township Hall, and every time, that goes through the cycle, I get banged so much for paying for getting that damn thing dumped that I don't even use.
Well, ours is coming right out of our city budget. Our landfill is being subsidized. Like I said, you do have to pay to take your garbage, but it doesn't. I can't see that paying for the entire facility. So there's I don't know, maybe $200,000 a year for a population of 23,000. But you're saying it's a separate line on your tax bill?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a recycling. It's paying for the recycling bins around the county.
Well, ultimately, people who are paying property taxes in Keene are also paying for the landfill and the recycling and all of that as well.
But we don't have like a regular municipality of a garbage collector that comes around, so we can't put recycling bins out by the road like they do in the in the big city.
We don't either here in Keene. That's one of the things I like about it. In fact, when I lived in Mississippi, there was a single dedicated company that worked for the county or whatever, and everyone had to go through them.
Right.
But here in Keene, there's actually competition. There are private companies doing this.
Yeah, you can call up multiple companies and get quotes and go with whichever one you think is the best offer.
Yep,
which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I've already decided if I lose my job because of mandates, that's probably going to be one of my new ventures.
You'll go into doing
garbage pickup, cutting lawns, mowing lawns, the whole nine. It's real easy work, and I got all the equipment already.
I need a new lawn guy, man.
Yeah.
Well, I still got a job, so I'll put you on my list.
Awesome.
We have a lot of garbage guys around here too. I remember about 20 years ago, I actually met one cat that did it with a pickup truck.
Yeah. Oh, and not forget, we also need snow movers here in New Hampshire. And the snow is coming. I think next week.
I heard something. I don't know where it was, if it was New York or somewhere, but some municipality in a snowy area is offering like $200 an hour or something.
I think it's Massachusetts.
Was it Massachusetts for snowplow guys?
Because all their guys quit.
I don't know. Must be.
Or
Wouldn't surprise me.
Because maybe some silly mandate made people quit and or leave, and now they have to. This is kind of like under the table contractor work.
Dude, if they're paying $200, that's almost worth it to buy
a
plow
truck.
truck.
And Massachusetts is right there. I mean, it's almost worth a 20-mile ride down to Taxachusetts.
Is it worth sitting in your truck all alone with a mask on because they're going to mandate that stupid crap?
Who knows?
No,
it's not.
What else was on your mind tonight, Major Payne?
Well, I was just China Joe today went on a tirade about getting the children vaccinated, and I just heard a news blip the other day about Big Bird pushing the little kids to get vaccinated. I mean, holy cow! How long are we going to let the media push us and bullshit us?
Okay, you can't say that on the
you
air.
can't.
Gotta say goodbye.
It's gonna keep happening with all of the heart issues, adverse reactions that we've seen, especially among athletes. You think people would have already wakened up.
You would think so. Well,
but no, it's going to require it's going to come right down to 5-year-olds having heart attacks.
How often do children go into hospitals for blood clots? I suspect it's not very often.
It can't be very often.
But that's what it's going to take. And still, you're going to have these parents who are clamoring. I see them on the social medias. They're all about, I can't wait till my 5-year-old can get their shot because we're going to be the first in line. And it's sickening. It's child abuse, and there are some people who are never going to wake up to this.
Yeah, man, I had one I had a link on a Twitter account. They actually took this woman's account down. Her name was like Sky Daddy or something like that on Twitter. She got suspended earlier sometime last week, but so I can't link to the image. But she had a series of Twitter posts as like a big image by some leftist who was all about getting the shot, and she had like a 14-year-old son who got the shot. And then subsequently came down with some serious issue. I forget, what the medical term for it was, but now all of a sudden she's got to pay for all these medical bills because it's like, well, the shot was quote unquote free, but the medical bills that now she has to pay for her son are definitely not being subsidized by the government. She's got to pay thousands of dollars a month for all of this stuff and so she was sounding like that she had changed her mind about this, that life had a way of teaching this lesson to her. And then a few days later, she posts again about how she's going to have her daughter get the shot because her doctor says that these side effects are more likely to affect males than they are females. So after going through an absolute nightmare that is continuing with her teenage son, she's just going to go ahead and take the same risk with her daughter.
Because some dude in a white lab coat told her so, and this is the Milgram experiment. They're 26 out of 40 people are going to kill you if Fauci tells them to.
I mean, on what grounds would the doctor even make the claim that, these side effects, which, by the way, aren't being admitted to by Pfizer or the government or the CDC, are more likely to affect men than female? And did this doctor recommend that she get her son the vaccine?
I'm sure he did.
Well, why is she still going to that doctor? The doctor is one of the people who caused her to have all of these medical bills that she's paying for her son.
Oh, and that doctor is getting a finder's fee for every vaccine that he administers. That's something else that isn't talked about ever.
I don't know
every
about
every shot they administer, they get commission.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
Not the doctor themselves, but their corporation.
Oh, like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna.
Pfizer's handing out commissions every shot it's given.
Is that legal? I thought that's the reason they give doctors like special trips. Like the sales agents or whatever from the pharmaceutical companies aren't... Last I heard, they weren't supposed to give commissions to doctors.
To the doctor.
Yeah.
But to the health administration? I don't see why
do that.
I don't see why that's not legal in this country that we live in, this cronyism country.
I don't know if it's legal or not, but I know massive amounts of money are being transferred from the American public.
Is it legal to have lotteries for vaccine participants?
Not when the government's doing it.
When the government does it, it is, yeah.
603-283-6160 if you want to join us. There's more coming up. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The European Commission is accusing Belarus of gangster-style tactics in a border standoff in which at least 7 migrants have died. 2,000 migrants are massing at the Belarusian border with Poland, where they're being denied entry into the European Union by Polish border guards. The EU's executive says it's planning more sanctions against Minsk, but Professor Yelena Korostsileva, a professor of international politics at Kent University, says fresh action is long overdue.
There is no really concerted response from the EU per se. All we know that sanctions obviously take time, but there is nothing to address actually people's conditions on the ground.
The Biden administration is gearing up for a fight over COVID-19 vaccine mandates for large companies. It's filed a case before an appeals court that has temporarily halted the measure. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organisations have sued, calling the rule issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration an overreach of government authority. Because there are challenges to the rule in multiple circuit courts, the cases can be consolidated and heard by one federal appeals court chosen by lottery.
Meanwhile, in the UK, staff working on the front lines of England's National Health Service have been told they must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Staff will be given until April of next year to get both vaccine doses before jabs are made compulsory. From FSN's London Bureau, Laura Macon-Isherwood reports.
More than 80,000 NHS workers in England are unvaccinated. The Health Secretary Sajid Javid says the measures being introduced will avoid preventable harm and protect patients. The rules will apply in England only, though, and will have to get parliamentary approval. There will also be exemptions permitted for specific medical reasons.
Also in Britain today, a fresh argument about whether members of Parliament should be allowed to have second jobs. It's been revealed that Geoffrey Cox, a lawmaker with Boris Johnson's governing Conservative Party, spent part of the COVID lockdown working as a lawyer in the Caribbean. He cast his votes in Parliament by proxy and may not have broken any rules. But pollster Chris Curtis says the taint of scandal is now impacting the government's popularity.
What we had seen was an increase in the number of people who said that they described Boris Johnson as corrupt and also as the Conservative Party as corrupt. In both cases, nearly half the population think that's a correct description now.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. We've been telling you about how Intercoin can help any business launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. Well, Intercoin has launched its investor token worldwide, and it's available on an exchange. You can create an account at exmarkets.com with just an email address, so you can actually keep your privacy intact. You can then deposit dozens of different cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, and then use them to buy ITR, which is the Intercoin Investor Token. Learn more about the Intercoin vision at intercoin.org. And now you can buy or sell ITR on exmarkets.com. That's exmarkets.com. And you might just be advancing the cause of liberty around the world. exmarkets.com. Let's go to the phones. We have Doc calling from an anonymous place. Doc, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, good morning, it's New Hampshire still, and not morning. Sorry. I'm officially having to break a promise on air. I promised I would not be weird, but unfortunately...
We're all a little weird here.
Well, we're all a little weird. Well, yeah, we don't... Yeah, it's New Hampshire. Welcome to here. Yeah, I'm a native. Okay, so y'all get the full measure of weird on air. And sorry, not sorry. So yeah, I this has been an odd segment because I am reasonably confident that we are over target, by which I mean I think that the alphabets are a little concerned with what's going on and being awkward.
Well, they did drive a drone in through the studio here, and they did kick in my door, so I agree.
I know, right? So Grok your sister, so yeah, there's a So how do we make this? Is there any way to not be weird with this? No.
I don't know what this is. What are you referring to?
The fact that
what are the alphabets concerned with? You mentioned. I don't know that they're concerned with anything. This is.
Presume you're talking about federal agencies, alphabet agencies.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, they seem to be concerned with Free Talk Live and the people who are associated with Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I mean, can you get to the point? Because apologies, but you kind of dancing around this. Let's hear it.
Oh, you think I'm dancing? Then cool. Apparently, I'm over target. And on that cryptic BUTT note, whoever is not an alphabet, sign us off.
Huh?
I
have no
know.
idea what she is saying. I'm doing my best to try to figure it out.
I mean, there's no doubt the feds have an interest in New Hampshire.
Yeah, they've been investigating us since 2005 here in Keene at the very least. That's the first time Dave Ridley was contacted by FBI head agent Phil Christiana, and he has continued.
Really? I did not know that story.
Yeah, it goes way back. He has continued to investigate Free Staters I presume he's investigating more than just Keene. It's just I live here, so I hear about what happens here. And, arresting us for various different things over the last 2 decades, roughly.
I would imagine that a lot of the focus is on Keene because that's where so much of the direct activism seems to happen versus the more politically oriented activism that happens in Manchester or Concord or something. Here in Keene, the activism is very direct and not aggressive, and not forceful, but forceful in its approach. It's like, hey, we're here, we're declaring our freedom, and we're going to be free. And that tends to get the attention of the powers that be, one way or the other.
Look, the reality is, she used the term over the target, and that's been true for years. Now the Free State Project and the migration of freedom lovers here is really kind of reaching, I would say, an apex or a peak of activity. Maybe it'll keep getting bigger. I expect that it will, but we're at a level of people coming here and visiting and moving and buying houses that is just absolutely unprecedented in the history of the Free State Project. And so
I don't know if they can find houses to buy.
Well, then they'll build them.
That's assuming they can find land to buy.
There's plenty of land.
That's another well, yeah, not in Cheshire County, but you're gonna have to go out to the woods, plain and simple.
That's fine. There's going to be people coming here. In fact, Mark Warden, the Porcupine Realtor, recently had a seminar, like an online, home buying and moving to New Hampshire kind of seminar for people that are interested in this migration, and dozens of people were attending this seminar. And this was reported last night on the new Pork Chat show that it's actually competing with us on Monday nights. But Justin O'Donnell, Carla Garrick, Jeremy Kaufman, and another gentleman, Bill, who's a New Hampshire native.
So it's a Free State Project chat.
Yeah, it's like an official Free State Project open discussion kind of chat about things that are happening in New Hampshire, and taking questions from the audience about what's happening, how to move, things like that. And they were reviewing the New Hampshire Democrats' little seminar that they had on Sunday night, which, if you haven't seen it yet, if you want a great 90-minute long infomercial on why libertarians should move to the Free State move to New Hampshire, whether you join the Free State Project is another question, but you should move here to get active for liberty. It is a fantastic presentation made by the New Hampshire Democrats, breathlessly against what we're doing, but at the same time, they really did a good job researching, and it was mostly accurate in what they were saying, and they do amazing work. I got to hand it to them on being obsessed with us. So.
Well, that's how you know we're successful, right? I mean, the Democrats are panicking. The Republicans, I don't know if they're panicking or not. They're probably
they're
panicking.
Too old. They'll have a heart attack.
You're not wrong. That's especially true in Cheshire County. I don't know about everywhere else, but the only Republicans who weren't super old were the Liberty ones, from what I saw in Cheshire County.
Yeah, so we're literally going to outlast the old guard of the Republican Party. And the other thing is, like, the Democrats are well aware of the Free Staters that are taking over the Republican Party and having a lot of success at it. Like, a lot of the key state house seats Like the House Majority Leader is held by a Free Stater. There's several like committee heads. So there's like 20 or something committees of different types. So there's the Judiciary Committee and the Criminal Justice Committee, and then there's the Fishing Game, and then so like there's all these different things. A bunch of them are actually headed up by Free Staters.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
what's the Senate like? Because I never hear
that's
anything
harder
about
to
that
get into.
in New Hampshire.
There's only 24 senators. So for listeners that aren't familiar, there's 400 state house seats in New Hampshire. So it's easy. Relatively speaking, it's easy to run for state house. If you can go door to door and knock on your neighbors' doors, you can win the election as a first timer. But as a senator, there's only 24 of them, so you're dealing with a much larger political territory, larger amount of people.
What is that, 2 per county? Is that how that works?
I don't think it's divvied by county.
Okay.
It's one of those gerrymandered maps, I think.
Yeah, I think one of ours is so gerrymandered it goes all the way out to the seacoast. I think we have 2.
I think that's the executive council that you're thinking of, but yeah, there is. I know which one you're talking about. I've seen that map before. But it's harder to get into the Senate, and so far, from my understanding, we don't have any Free Staters who are senators. But that said, apparently Jason Osborne, who is the current Free Stater, who is the House Majority Leader, he's going to run for Senate in 2022. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Well, we just found out today old Flanunu is going to be rerunning for governor.
Yeah, he bailed on his plans to run for U.S. Senate because I think he saw the poll numbers were dropping.
Yeah, he's not a fan right now.
So he figured he would stick with what he can probably do, which is pull off another re-election as an incumbent.
When you say he's not a fan, do you mean that?
I mean he has lost a lot of his fans.
Yeah,
people who were die-hard Republicans who are always say, well, he made one mistake. I'm still going to vote for him because of the opposition. But he pissed off a lot of people this year.
Yeah, he became a hardcore tyrant, and then he
showed his colors.
He constantly cried on Twitter about people who were threatening him, even though no one ever threatened him. He arrested peaceful protesters who were just minding their own business at the executive council, and in
front of his house.
And he basically begged to bend over for the federal government to get $27 million from them. So I will be surprised if he wins re-election for governor after everything that's happened. 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Conan.
And it happened again. If you're still waiting to follow us on our Odyssey channel, now is the time. Video.freetalklive.com if you want to find it. Bonnie just pointed out to us that we are not streaming on YouTube, and we've looked into it, and it turns out to be shocking. We've been given another strike, and we're suspended from their platform until like February. So like 90 days at this point.
Well, no, apparently that's how long till the strike expires. But I think that we will be able to resume the transmissions, but I don't think we should.
But because
agree.
it's up to 2 strikes right now, right?
Yeah, if you get that third one,
that's it.
Permanently delete everything.
Heads lopped off. And it's from a show from like 3 weeks ago, too.
Yeah, steps 4 steps to dehumanization.
I'm wondering if people are just not caught up and they're actually physically reporting us, and it's not some silly algorithm or something that's spotting all of this. Because
who knows? But we don't have to deal with that on our Odyssey channel.
Correct. Right.
You can find us there at video.freetalklive.com. It's free. It's decentralized. It's basically uncensorable because it's based on a blockchain-based technology called Library, which is actually uncensorable. But Odyssey is sort of a web-based front end for that, and they do have some controls there, like they don't allow pornography, but none of that applies to us. So we'll always be there. Video.freetalklive.com.
Well, I, for one, am going to miss the endless similar comments from the same 3 probably federal agents that are in our YouTube chat every single night.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Actually, I'm not going to miss them at all.
I'm deeply going to miss the complaints about one person being on their phone and the other person who just says Bitcoin is a scam repeatedly. Missing out on some quality commenters over there on our YouTube channel. It's truly,
even
truly
lower
tragic.
quality than DLive. Honestly, just the worst of the worst. So
So video.freetalklive.com.
Are we still on your channel? Didn't you have us streaming on your channel as well?
We are, and that was sort of a backup for when the Free Talk Live channel got suspended. I think I don't know how many people watching there now, but that was just sort of a YouTube backup. But it shouldn't be there anyway, now that I think about it, because that just encourages people to just continue using YouTube, which is going out of their way to keep us off of their platform. So video.freetalklive.com. That's really where you should be following us. Let's go to the phones. We have Drake calling from Colorado. Drake, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys, you got me?
Hey, Drake.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
Hey, I was calling to talk to Conan and everybody about last week. I think you said that tiny home, right before the break, said tiny homes were a scam, and I just wanted to say that I used to live in a fifth-wheel trailer, and it's pretty liberating to know all you could do is hitch up and head out of town if you wanted to. And I was just going in, I was wondering what you thought.
Well, how much square footage did you have?
It's like a pretty small apartment, it was 38 foot.
That's a pretty big establishment. I lived in a 26-footer for about 2 or 3 years.
Now, when you're saying 26 feet and 30 whatever feet, you don't mean square feet, right?
26 by 8, or maybe it was as wide as 10. So that's still pretty big. I'm talking about these 300 square foot buildings that people are they're all crazy about.
The ones on the trailers.
Sometimes they put them. They're on wheels so they can cart them around, but usually they get parked and they stay there.
There was one of these at the Porcupine Freedom Festival last year, but it actually had like 2 stories and air conditioning, and it was pretty neat as a concept for someone who lives like a nomadic style life. But I can't imagine any actual appeal of one of these things.
My biggest concern, first of all, it's definitely a fad. You go on YouTube and you
they say the same thing about Bitcoin.
You look up a fad in that the people who no one's really investing in these things.
Okay.
And all the tiny homes that I've seen, I have a couple on my route.
Really?
They're just in the backyard of their mom's and dad's home or wherever, and no one's living in it. It's just become a storage facility, a 300 square foot. Because I've talked to the people. I'm like, it's a pretty neat little building. Who's living in it? Oh, we're just using it for storage. But no, it's definitely a fad. You've got these people who say that they're living out, on the beach, and they got their pet snake, and where are they going to the bathroom? Where are they taking their showers? Where are they eating?
They don't have that in their tiny home?
There's no room, but they have room for their banjo. But I mean, they have a room for 3 books. But I mean, my biggest but here the reason that it pisses me off so much is because
hold on, it's not a home if there's no damn place to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, help me conceptualize this. You
describe that's what I'm saying. Or they have like a composter toilet or whatnot, so they're having to deal with all of that.
So give me an idea of what 300 square feet is like.
Well, it's smaller than this room.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is what 15.
It's like 20 by 15 or something like that.
Probably about the size. It could be the size of this room.
You could easily have a bathroom in the size of this room.
The problem is you cannot do anything. You are never going to be able to work on your car because the tools, whether they be garden implements or working, something to work on my vehicle, would take up this room. Just my tools.
Well, not everybody wants to work on their car.
What are your hobbies?
What are you doing to your car that takes up the entire room?
He does everything to his car.
You're not going to have any hobbies because you won't have any room to store any of the stuff. Do you like to cook? Sorry, there's no room for any cooking implements. You're never going to be able to. Where's that bread machine going to go? Where's your stupid juicer going to go? There's all kinds of stuff. The same thing with my kitchen. My kitchen would not fit in this room.
I think you're over exaggerating how much space it requires for the average person. Like I can fix most things on my vehicle, and all of it fits in a toolbox that is the size of a laptop bag.
If all you're really doing in one of these tiny homes is just sleeping, and maybe eating some breakfast, all right, it'll work if that's your lifestyle. But you're never going to have room to do all the things that. It's gonna prevent. My whole philosophy is to get rid of the middleman and do it myself because that's the cheaper, better way to do things.
Sure.
If you live in such a way where you're paying some third party to do everything for you, tiny home will work for you, and that's why I think it's a scam because it's pushing self-sufficiency out of the equation. It's making everyone live in cubicles, not own anything, and be happy. And that has been, and now they're actually saying it out loud.
But there are some people who are seeking that, right? Like, I don't know if I would call this a scam per se. I personally am not interested in it, but I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to be tied down to a specific location. I mean, a home is a string. It's something that it ties you down. It's hard to get rid of. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort. There's always something breaking. You got to always do repairs on it.
That's life.
That's life. That's not to say the tiny home isn't going to need to be repaired. Surely it will.
Trust me. And when something breaks in your tiny home, how are you going to fix it? You don't have any tools because you don't have any room for it. Exactly. You have to call somebody.
No, tools don't take up that much space, dude.
I'm sorry. Yes. When you start getting to the nitty gritty and you start getting into, I'm not talking about just some wrenches and a hammer. I'm talking about the whole nine.
Well, for somebody who,
what do you imagine is going to break that can't be fixed with a ratchet?
A tree falls on your roof. How are you going to fix that?
Don't put it under a tree.
That's not very likely.
One of your tires, one of your tires expires. How are you going to fix it? Where's your spare tire at? Where's all the tools?
Call AAA.
Exactly. That's you are helping my argument. You have to call a third party to help you.
Not everybody wants to be as self-reliant as you, Conan. Some people are totally fine with the idea of
it's part of the scam, Ian. That's what I'm saying. It's part of the plan.
Roof. I don't know how to fix my roof, and I don't feel like learning how. So I'm willing to pay somebody who's a professional that's got years of experience at doing it to just come and take care of the job. And I'm willing to do that. And I think most people are like that. This is division of labor. We can do something that is specific to our talents that we want to do, and that way we can just pay somebody else to do the crap we don't want to do. I tried changing my oil when I was a teenager with my dad. I'm like, the hell with this. I'm not doing this ever again. I'd rather pay some oil jockey to do it.
I've changed my oil once, and then I realized that you save basically like $5 by doing it yourself.
And it takes a long time.
Yeah,
by
I was
comparison.
like, screw this.
Yeah.
You can go to the Valvoline place here and get it done for like $25-$30. It takes 10 minutes. They top off all your fluids for you, which, by the way, the average person doesn't keep all of those at home anyway. And then you're done.
This is all true, and I agree with you. I can't do everything. There's hope.
No one can.
Exactly. I pay someone else to do things that I can't do.
We need people in our lives.
But the scam, when I say scam, it's a plan. It's actually being said out loud now. For years and years, why this fad has been gaining steam, the whole plan has been to decrease your self-sufficiency so that you have to be dependent on other parties, on other people for everything.
Well, if so, the tiny home makes you less dependent as far as you got less that could go wrong.
It makes you more dependent.
I don't know if I agree. You got less square footage, so therefore there's less to break, right?
But you don't have anything. You don't have a life.
That's up to them, man.
You have your metaverse. You have your internet.
Why can't they, go outside or go to a bar just because they live in a tiny house?
They're going to be outside more often because, like Conan says, there's not much they can do inside the home.
You're going to have to do more things outside, correct?
So they'll have a life.
Will they?
It sounds like them. They can move the thing into the middle of the woods, or they can move it into a trailer park, man. They can do whatever.
What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. I'm sort of between the two of you on this. Sometimes it's easier just to hire someone.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The European Commission is accusing Belarus of gangster-style tactics in a border standoff in which at least 7 migrants have died. 2,000 migrants are massing at the Belarusian border with Poland, where they're being denied entry into the European Union by Polish border guards. The EU's executive says it's planning more sanctions against Minsk, but Professor Jelena Korostsileva, a professor of international politics at Kent University, says fresh action is long overdue.
There is no really concerted response from the EU per se. All we know that sanctions obviously take time, but there is nothing to address actually people's conditions on the ground.
The Biden administration is gearing up for a fight over COVID-19 vaccine mandates for large companies. It's filed a case before an appeals court that has temporarily halted the measure. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organisations have sued, calling the rule, issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, an overreach of government authority. Because there are challenges to the rule in multiple circuit courts, the cases can be consolidated and heard by one federal appeals court chosen by lottery.
Meanwhile, in the UK, staff working on the front lines of England's National Health Service have been told they must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Staff will be given until April of next year to get both vaccine doses before jabs are made compulsory. From FSN's London Bureau, Laura Macon-Isherwood reports.
More than 80,000 NHS workers in England are unvaccinated. The Health Secretary Sajid Javid says the measures being introduced will avoid preventable harm and protect patients. The rules will apply in England only, though, and will have to get parliamentary approval. There will also be exemptions permitted for specific medical reasons.
Also in Britain today, a fresh argument about whether members of Parliament should be allowed to have second jobs. It's been revealed that Geoffrey Cox, a lawmaker with Boris Johnson's governing Conservative Party, spent part of the COVID lockdown working as a lawyer in the Caribbean. He cast his votes in Parliament by proxy and may not have broken any rules. But pollster Chris Curtis says the taint of scandal is now impacting the government's popularity.
What we had seen was an increase in the number of people who said that they described Boris Johnson as corrupt and also as the Conservative Party as corrupt. In both cases, nearly half the population think that's a correct description now.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the clarion warning issued on Monday by the World Food Programme, predicting an imminent catastrophe in Afghanistan. David Beasley, the head of the WFP, said the country is on the brink of the worst humanitarian situation on Earth, with 23 million people inexorably heading towards starvation. It will, he said, be hell. Shelley Thakral of the World Food Programme expanded on what her boss had to say about the urgent need for international support.
He spoke so passionately and said, shame on you, world. Shame on you, world, for all the billions of the trillions of money that we have. And yet, children, you're seeing children who are starving, who are undernourished, who are underweight, even families who've had to sell children. I have no words for it. The desperation is that we need money. We need $220 million a month to feed people until the end of the year. And then 2022, we take stock.
The crisis has been sparked not just by political uncertainty with the Taliban back in charge, but by Afghanistan's recent drought and its impending winter. Since the fall of the government headed by President Ashraf Ghani, many Western nations have suspended aid operations in Afghanistan, but the WFP says that is no longer an option if disaster is to be averted. The main news again, the European Commission is accusing Belarus of gangster-style tactics in a border standoff that has left at least 7 migrants dead. The Biden administration is appealing against a federal judge's ruling suspending the imposition of a vaccine mandate for private companies with more than 100 employees. And staff working on the front lines of England's NHS have been told they must be fully vaccinated against COVID or lose their jobs. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
In a competitive tech world, companies are always looking to the latest trend to keep their employees productive and happy at the office. But a new study suggests that employees are actually happiest when they're simply pretending to work from home. The study from tech and consulting giant IBM found employees felt overall more focused and content with their jobs when doing personal tasks like catching up on laundry or their favorite TV shows when they should be working.
I just make sure that I send some emails to my supervisor first thing in the morning so he thinks I'm up and working, but then I just go right back to bed.
I never have to deal with rush hour traffic or anything. I just walk across the room, sit down at my desk, and start browsing through my Twitter feed immediately.
The trend is making its way to the country's most influential tech companies like Google, where employees are encouraged to put in 12 empty hours of work a week from their homes. The study hasn't swayed every company, however. Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer said in a statement, "At Yahoo, we prefer that our employees pretend to work side by side right here in our offices."
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and as always, you're invited to weigh in. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Conan.
And we just had a caller asking about tiny homes. Drake, thank you so much for the call. You seemed to have hung up before we could actually get back to you. You had a question about tiny homes, and that's got us into a broader subject about sustainability, well, self-sustainability. We were talking about sustainability in the first segment, how couples are fighting over it, but now we're having a much broader discussion about sustaining one's lifestyle and paying for something versus just doing it yourself. And like I was saying when we were going out, I'm sort of between the two of you on this. There are some things that it's worth it for me to just do myself. Like if the alternator were to go out on my Eclipse, it's worth it for me to just do that myself because it'll take me at most an hour to do. But if it's something like the timing belt needs to be replaced, which I did have it replaced like a month or so ago, that I could do that myself, but it's going to take 4 or 5 hours of work at best.
And maybe tools that you might not have available to you. Yeah, there are definitely things that it's better to contract out. The people who specialize it, who have the tools, who have the knowledge, are going to be able to do it in so much less time than you. Of course, my thing is that I'm not.
But if a limb fell on your roof, would you be capable of fixing it?
Oh, definitely.
What is ultimately the difference between... this is something I've never really looked into in any serious manner because it's not the lifestyle that I'm looking for, but what's the difference between having a tiny home, which is a relatively small square footage living space that could be, portable, that is portable.
That most people can never move again because they don't have the vehicle to do it.
Well, a lot of them, I would think that would be part of the deal, is like they got a big ass truck or whatever that they can move the thing around with. But and versus an RV, which is what's the difference?
Or a travel trailer.
Yeah,
that's a very good question, because one of the other problems with these tiny homes is when you actually started to add up all the materials involved and making them roadworthy too. By the way, because that's another one. A lot of people don't build these things roadworthy. They are dangerous.
Not shockproof.
They are not shockproof. Yeah, everything gets rattled around. But even that even happens to travel trailers. Especially plumbing and stuff just comes loose after
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Constant vibration.
But when you consider the actual building materials. Why not add another 300 square foot? Why not add a nice big fat garage? I mean,
because then it's not portable, right?
Well, I just said most people aren't moving these things afterwards.
Is that true?
Oh, the tiny homes that I'm familiar with, and when you consider that they're all sitting on their tires because no one ever blocks these things up. They're sitting on tires. The tires go dry rot after a couple of years, and then they're not roadworthy. And I said most of these things are like 300 square foot. That is way bigger than most of these things that I've seen are. We're talking like 100, 120, 150 square foot.
That's like the size of a jail cell.
This room, I am thinking this room is about 350 square foot. This is a big room. I could put a lot of stuff in this room. But we were using this argument. Comparing this room.
We put an entire studio in this room.
Correct, and there's 4 of us in here, and we've got all this equipment. I mean, there's a lot of, and we still have room to walk around. Most of the tiny homes I'm familiar with, lot smaller. The travel trailer, I just looked it up, I did the calculation. The travel trailer that I lived in was 220 square foot, and it was me and my daughter, and we were cramped. And I did that for 3 years, but I was only 19. I didn't have anything yet. Now I have accumulated more material wealth, and I wouldn't have room to do anything in this thing unless that was my lifestyle. And some people can do it, and some people like. And by the way, people
I don't understand the appeal
people
of
are
people.
people are already doing this. You got people in the cities that are living in these stupid cubicles. Look at the Japanese. I just saw an article. Someone they were visiting like the smallest apartment in Japan, which is like 90 square foot or something. It
happens a lot in the United Kingdom as well.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, New
anyone,
Yorkers have been living in the tiniest of apartments for a very, very long time. A lot of them have.
And you were talking about
the nose for them.
You were talking about the best part about these things is you can just pick them up. You could take them out in the middle of the woods and do whatever. But if you're out in the middle of the woods, why not build a bigger home? What's keeping you from?
Because maybe it's more expensive to build a bigger home.
It's going to, as I said, it's going to be a little bit more expensive.
And maybe this is the kind of person you got to understand. This is the kind of Conan. You're the kind of person who you put down roots, you build a garden, you take care of repairing your own truck. You're very self-sufficient compared to a person who would be building a tiny home. Now, the person may be building the tiny home themselves, which would make them somewhat self-sufficient. Or maybe they're hiring someone to do it.
That's another really great question. Just the material, just the room and the tools to build a tiny home. You wouldn't be able to fit all that material and those tools in
maybe it's a
afterwards.
Person who had a home. And they probably come from all like you probably got people coming into this from the cities who are living in a really crappy apartment. They're like, man, a tiny home's an expansion, right?
Yeah.
Like they're getting more room and they can move the thing around. Or maybe it's somebody who's had a big ass house and they're like, all right, my kids are moved out. I don't want to have more kids and I don't want to take care of this damn house. I don't want to have a maid come in to clean the damn house. I don't feel like cleaning the thing. All right, I'll spend the money to build a tiny home or spend the time or whatever to build a tiny home. Get into that, sell my old house, cover the costs, and then just hit the road. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, except why not just get a travel trailer?
Okay, that's what I was saying. What's the difference?
That's already built to pull behind your vehicle.
I got to agree with you there,
whereas
Conan.
these tiny homes are dangerous. A lot of them that I've seen, please don't pull. If I see something one of those things driving down the road, I'm just going to stop
out.
Exactly.
But that's why I'm saying, like, what fundamentally is the difference between a tiny home and a travel trailer?
The tiny home looks neat. And it's a fad.
So it's all about looks.
Here I could make it work. I would live in one of these things if I could have a 4-car garage next door where I can work, where I could store my stuff, and I would sleep and I would poop and I would eat in the tiny home.
Well, I've got something here about this. The number one reason for people to choose a tiny home versus a mobile home is that tiny homes are designed to be just like a real house, but smaller. Therefore, the quality should, in theory, be the same standard as a traditional house. But as you pointed out, and as this place points out, that's often not the case. It is cheaper, apparently. A tiny house on wheels will cost you around $60,000. Or you can find tiny homes for as little as $10,000 or as much as $200,000 versus $50,000 for a mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
So there are reasons. Evidently, it's cheaper. I mean, the one they have a picture of here is absolutely tiny. They're built on wheels, so they're portable. They're not. This is not a. I'm not seeing very many selling points about what is good about this.
All right, here's the other scam. When it comes to these small homes, you got here's another fad. It's these storage containers. They take and they stack them and they cut windows out and the whole nine.
I've seen those.
This is another huge scam, especially if you're in the desert or you're in a climate like ours where you have to insulate them properly. You have to do it the right way. Otherwise, you get moisture, condensation buildup inside the unit. And not to mention, you lose so much space just in insulating the damn things. It really doesn't make sense. Storage units to actually use as like a garage to store things in it, I would definitely, I'm keeping my eyes open for a good cheap one myself. But they have gone up as far as inflation is involved. They've gone up through the roof. But actually turning one of those into a living unit, nah.
Well, you wouldn't want to live in the desert or New Hampshire if you were going to live in one of these tiny homes, right? You'd want to live in somewhere with a more temperate climate.
This is what I'm saying. If you're gonna try this, don't do it in New Hampshire.
Well, according to a website called treehugger.com, they say that tiny homes are more weatherproofed. They are generally better insulated and winterproof than campers since they are custom built from the ground up. Owners can choose what kind of insulation and heating and cooling options suit them and their local climate, whereas RVs are generally not built to be lived in during the winter. So they say that the tiny home is a better option if you're going to be staying in a
I think I would agree with that. But you're going to have to build your tiny home to spec. You're going to have to, put the proper amount of insulation in the walls. Otherwise, it's basically just a RV on wheels, which is why not just buy an RV?
And still, insulation is only going to do so much if you're in like the desert or New Hampshire.
And you're gonna have to heat it and cool it as well. So
but you don't have as
more
much
space.
square footage. If you don't have as much square footage, it's not going to be as hard to cool the thing.
And every bit of insulation you put in there, believe it or not, is going to reduce the square footage, at least to some extent.
If you're talking about like a wood stove or something, you need a certain amount of space around your wood stove. So you're losing more real estate. You wouldn't want to go that route. No. But if you're living off the grid, why are you not using wood to burn? What are you going to use, electricity?
I don't know.
If you're living out in the woods, where's your power line coming from? The power company is not going to run a power line to your tiny home.
Well, that's the other thing. A lot of tiny homes are under weird regulations by cities and or prohibited entirely. Yep. It's a bit of a mess, according to the story. A lot of gray areas legally.
Maybe we're missing something. What is the reason to get one of these things? 603-283-6160.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means, stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Cody.
And Bitcoin.com. It's the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. Just click Getting Started at the top of the page. Take a few minutes out of your day to watch some videos about this important world-changing information, because I don't know if you've been watching the news, but the cryptocurrency market cap yesterday passed $3 trillion. Bitcoin, I believe, hit a new record high today. Which,
if not yesterday, 68,000 and change.
Which is not something we're going to just continually say here, because once Bitcoin starts doing this thing, it tends to hit
day.
It gets...
All right, 69,
sadly,
70, okay.
It's weird to say, but it does get old saying, oh, Bitcoin hit yet another all-time high. So head on over to Bitcoin.com, and if you already know about it, you want to stay up to date, go to news.bitcoin.com to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. That's Bitcoin.com, and their new site, news.bitcoin.com. Let's go to the phones. We have Camel calling. Camel, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, you wanted to know about the origin of why the whole tiny home thing kind of started, why people wanted them to begin with.
Yeah, because I don't get it.
Because they're getting sold out because they can't afford full-size homes anymore.
Well, I was kind of looking at this like 15 years ago, right? I think that's around where it started. But when I first heard about it, it was like they wanted to offer alternative housing for homeless, and they were trying to get around city regulations for housing.
It's not a house,
that's a noble
it's a
enough
mobile
goal.
home.
Right.
That's a noble enough goal.
And of course, no municipality wants a camp of homeless right outside their boundaries, and so that is why this legislation is basically it's countrywide, where you can't get a septic tank dug unless you have a permit from the city. The city is not going to give you a permit if you live in one of these tiny homes. It has to be a certain square footage. You're not going to get your power run. The power company's not going to run a pole out to this tiny home because you can't get a city permit, because the city has a law set up to prevent this from happening, which is sad.
Well, what would you need power for in one of these tiny homes anyway?
To run your metaverse. How you gonna run your internet, man?
I can't imagine someone living in one of these tiny homes, really wanting to play World of Warcraft or anything, that they would need high demand internet for. Their cell phones
I don't
can
think
be.
you want to actually live in one anyway, because during the day it's going to be hot as heck.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to basically just sleep in it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I could do that if I had a 4-car garage right next door for all of my stuff. But I would sleep in the stupid tiny home. Yeah, that'd be all right.
So, Camel, you were looking into possibly considering getting one of these. You chose not to. I mean, was that what it was?
It was just because it was just the weight of it for one thing. They weigh so much more than an RV or trailer anyway. But twice as much. They're so hard to, and that makes it so hard to tow and transport. Plus, like Conan said, they're built like a house, and they're not meant to be, transported on the road constantly.
If you can even get a permit to pull the stupid things.
Oh right, yeah, and you have to build it to DOT specs and everything.
Sounds like a mess.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like anything I'd want any part of. Thank you for the call tonight, Camel. I don't get it. And I'm not going to...
By the way, used our SIP line. Sounding good there.
He did. You can find that at, what was the...
SIP.freetalklive.com. It'll give you the step-by-step instructions on how to call in that way.
Yeah, that way you can get past the whole mobile carrier nonsense or landline nonsense. Or the calls just don't sound as good as they do with VoIP. And SIP, as I understand it, is an alternative to...
It is VoIP, basically.
Okay, awesome. That's sip.freetalklive.com.
You're just not using the phone switching or whatever. It's just straight point-to-point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you had a story that was related to the climate change thing that we were talking about earlier. And for those who don't recall, we opened the show with this article about how 1 in 3 couples, or 30% of people in relationships, have admitted to fighting over climate change, which to me is absolutely bizarre. But you have something related about Americans experiencing pre-pandemic PTSD. Which is PTSD before anything has happened to cause PTSD.
We have another level of victimhood. I mean, we just can't have enough victims in this country, and now we've got another classification.
And the numbers here are just so high, it's unbelievable. I mean, I understand that the younger people are always talking about how they've got anxiety and depression. I hear it all the time from millennials and Generation Z. I don't remember hearing anything about it when I was growing up in the 90s.
No, slap some mud on it and walk it off, son.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that stuff. But now, according to KGO in San Francisco, a survey from Yale University is showing that 70% of Americans are now very or somewhat worried about global warming, as more and more of them show signs of anxiety or depression as a result of that worry.
I understand, especially for the younger generations, why they would, experience anxiety. And I would suggest that a fair number of them, like Greta Thunberg, are legitimately traumatized, but it's not by climate change.
By the way, have you seen her in the last couple of days?
No, but they're traumatized by the fear-mongering that goes on revolving around climate change. They're constantly being told that this thing is going to kill them
yes.
and end the world as they know it. That's a terrifying thing for adults to be telling children.
Correct, especially when I know Al Gore doesn't believe this nonsense.
Didn't he say the ice caps were going to be melted?
Yeah, but he doesn't really believe it. He
2005?
has so many tells. He's been lying this entire time.
Okay, why did you bring up Greta Thunberg, though?
Because exactly what Arya just said. She is traumatized. She's losing her mind.
She's textbook PTSD.
She thinks she's going to die in the next 5 years. She thinks we have already passed the
point of
no return. That the Earth is going to be on fire in the next 10 years, and that that's you. What did she say? You've destroyed my future, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she really believes this stuff, and the worst part about it is Al Gore did it.
See, the funny thing about
his cronies.
The funny thing about that girl is I don't follow much about her, but every now and then, you run across something, and I saw her criticizing politicians.
Yeah, she says they're not doing enough.
For not doing enough.
She says they just talk, blah,
and
blah, blah,
she's
blah.
not wrong about that, right? Like, that's the thing that politicians do, is they just talk, and then they don't ever actually do anything that you want them to do.
Because they don't really believe it, Ian. They're just playing the game.
Yeah, they want power.
Greta believes it, and she says she's not doing enough. They just talk, blah, blah, blah.
She's got a disconnect, right? Like, she can see now that the politicians aren't actually helping her. They're not doing what that she wants them to do. They talk about helping, but they don't actually do what they say they're going to do. So she can see that they're being dishonest. But yet, she hasn't made the connection that the very same politicians run the government schools that told you all this BS in the first place.
Correct. So maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, she's actually coming to a point where she's going to wake up. She's going to get her red pill, and she's going to realize that not only has she been lied to, but I mean, first of all, she's already figured out that these politicians aren't going to do anything.
Right.
The next step is to figure out that she's been lied to this whole time.
Unless,
by the
of course,
algorithms
she's
of this
a
world.
tool, and she's
I think they picked her for a reason. Yeah. I think she has mental deficiency. She's going to believe anything is told to her.
Look at Ann Coulter, man. There was just an article today where she was describing Trump as an idiot because he didn't fulfill his campaign promise to, do something about the Mexican border. These people never learn. It doesn't matter how many lies these politicians tell, how many campaign promises they break, how much they promise to do anything. They're going to take their private jets to their climate change conference, and they're going to talk about what a serious problem this is, and then they're going to exacerbate the problem, if there even is a problem. And from what I can tell, there really isn't one. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Whitner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Biden administration is gearing up for a fight over COVID vaccine mandates for large companies. It's filed a case before an appeals court that has temporarily halted the measure. It took just a day and a half for the president's ruling, which compels companies with 100 or more employees to mandate vaccinations or test workers weekly, to be blocked by a federal court. FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organizations have sued, calling the rule, issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, an overreach of government authority.
Hong Kong authorities have arrested 3 people on allegations of encouraging the casting of blank votes at the city's upcoming legislative election. The electoral process is facing criticism from democracy activists, with candidates required to pass a vetting process before being allowed to stand. FSN's Richard Kimber reports from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's Independent Commission Against Corruption says the 3 people arrested are suspected of sharing an online message calling on the public to cast blank votes at next month's Legislative Council polls. Hong Kong's election laws ban the incitement of others not to vote or to cast an invalid vote during the voting period. The maximum penalty for breaking those laws is 3 years in jail and a $25,000 fine. Security officials are warning the public not to meddle in the electoral process, which is facing widespread criticism from democracy activists after Beijing imposed new rules to require all candidates to be vetted for their patriotic values before being allowed to stand. The government says despite those rules, there is still room for opposition voices in the legislature.
The S&P has snapped an 8-day hot streak with inflation data dominating investor sentiment. And Tesla's shares fall again as traders react to a social media poll conducted by its founder, Elon Musk. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Strong earnings, better than expected jobs figures, and the passing of an infrastructure bill helped propel the US markets into record territory over recent days. But that winning run came to an end Tuesday, thanks, in part, to inflation concerns. October's producer price index ticked up 0.6% month over month. The Dow closed down 0.3% Tuesday, the S&P 0.4%, and the Nasdaq fell 0.6%. Tesla closed the day down 12% as Wall Street reacts to CEO Elon Musk's move over the weekend to conduct a Twitter poll over whether he should sell 10% of his stock.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. Talking about climate change here on the show tonight and how American couples are, well, not American couples, but 2,000 respondents in a survey of people who were in relationships responded that they admitted to fighting about which one of them is greener. And then we learned that 70% of Americans suffer some degree of climate change anxiety, largely because I imagine it's much truer on people who are under 30 or people who are under 40 or whatever, because we've heard this crap our entire lives.
Inundated. And it wasn't even that bad when Ian and I were kids, but I remember when Captain America was a thing. But that was all about pollution and stuff. That made sense. But now
you mean Captain Planet?
Captain Planet. I'm sorry, Captain Planet. Yeah, but
that was all about like
it was about pollution, which made sense because we saw pictures of the flamingo all caught up in the can holder or otters,
Sure.
and floating around in oil, and the pelicans. That made sense. It's like, yeah, this is nasty. We need to do something about this.
But no one did anything about it.
And to a certain degree, or either that or they stopped reporting on it.
They just stopped. I mean, there's a giant trash island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
There really isn't. That's a myth. There's a lot of plastic floating around in the ocean, yes, and it kind of concentrates in certain areas, but there's not like a island that you can walk on.
No, obviously you can't walk on it. It's floating trash.
Yeah, but the pictures they show, every time they show that floating island of plastic, it's usually someone's coastline. It's usually some South American coastline, and they're not, and they zoom out in such a way that they just showing us this floating garbage. If you zoomed out a little bit more, you would see some dude on a dock throwing a bucket of trash off the pier. No, this floating island in the ocean is just really small, little tiny bits of plastic. A lot of it's clear; you can see right through it, and it's just breaking up. And the sun is doing a lot of the breaking up.
Well, there is massive amounts of plastic in the ocean as well.
True, and probably a lot of it is American trash that we sold to Asian countries to recycle for us, and they're like, "Hey, this is good business," and they're throwing it off the pier, just dumping it right off the boat.
At any rate, no one has done anything. I mean, recycling didn't help. They put forward these centers that we talked about where they don't really save on materials or energy or anything like that. Nope. They end up burning more energy than it takes, and thereby polluting more by trying to take 10 plastic bottles and turning them into 10 slightly different plastic bottles. I don't know exactly what the process is, but the idea of recycling, as I understand it, is just like reusing your own water bottle or reusing your own cans or something like that. Cutting out all of the middlemen is saying, hey, I can reuse this thing and not throw it away yet, and that's useful because that's just less trash. At least less trash now.
This is true. Frugality. That's the way to go, in my opinion. But it's so easy to buy all of this stuff. What are you gonna drink? Can you drink the water out of your tap? Do you have a nice filter like I do? You don't? Yeah. Oh, you're buying your water, and they all come in these individual little receptacles, and you
but the Keen water is so bad that in the span of about 2 months, I already have to replace my filter.
I don't know what you're talking about. Keen water is the best damn municipal water I've had.
It is, and I still have one of those reverse osmosis systems because I can taste just a little bit, but it's good stuff. In Tennessee, in Florida, the water tastes like farts.
It's awful down there. It's so bad.
In Tennessee, I could taste like the chlorine they were putting in there was just nonsense.
See, I'm used to well water. I suppose I should preface with that. But I mean, the Keen water is filled with like heavy elements. It's terrible for your hair.
At least they're not putting fluoride in. That's all I really care about.
True, they are not doing that.
And I check every time, and I don't think we have enough crunchies here in this area that I don't think that would ever happen. But I think in Manchester, you guys over there, man, you should talk about all the legislation you guys are passing. You should look at that. Get that crap out of your water.
They have fluoride in the water there?
I do believe it.
At any rate, that's not helping with climate change, but 70% of Americans are experiencing, or at least somewhat concerned about climate change, and
I got to say something, though, about this headline, and it's KGO, which is San Francisco, major broadcaster there, reporting on this story. They link to the alleged survey from Yale that they're talking about here, where it says 70% of Americans are now very or somewhat worried about global warming, and I'm
not buying that. 70%, I'm not buying that.
I mean, that's horrifyingly large.
70% of kids, yes. 70% of Americans, no.
And they don't, I don't see the demographic breakdown, but according to the executive summary first of all, they link to a page over at Yale, which has multiple studies on it. So I'm taking one of the most recent ones, which is called Climate Change in the American Mind, published back in June, and it was done in March. So this isn't that recent, but it's from this year. It's the most recent one of this type.
Right.
And just looking for the word worried in this executive summary comes up with Americans, a majority of them, 64%, say they are at least somewhat worried about global warming. So, 64, 70%, there's definitely a discrepancy there. Why
10%?
Well, not 10%, but why are they?
10% of 64. I mean,
yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
And why are they still using global warming? Isn't that over? Why, I thought it was climate change or climate crisis or climate emergency.
Well, they address a few different things in there, but anyway, I'm calling into question the reporting in this particular story. But that said, they did speak to a psychologist working in Oakland. He says, quote, his name is Noah Oderberg. He says, you may have heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. A psychiatrist came up with pre-PTSD because it's not a trauma that's already occurred. It's a fear of a future trauma. So it's this new idea.
No, it's still just PTSD because the trauma has occurred and the trauma was fear-mongering.
And when they were in school or whatever. He says it involves anxiety and depression. He says he's seeing more and more people bringing up the subject of global warming in therapy, citing feelings of sadness and despair, saying that in California, the wildfires and smoke are a trigger. The stakes are high. He said, quote, 50% said they were planning to have fewer children, and one of the reasons stated was their fear around climate change. It's very new, and the field of psychology is not prepared for it.
Now, what is this syndrome called again? What is it?
Pre-PTSD.
Pre-PTSD.
Why don't they just call it, so we have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they just call it pre-traumatic stress disorder? Because that's what it is. Greta Thunberg is suffering pre-traumatic stress disorder.
I have to disagree. She's just suffering from PTSD, the same as the people that the psychologists. They're just dumb.
They've been abused.
But it's not post yet. It hasn't happened yet.
It has happened. They're not scared of climate change. It's not climate change that's scaring them. It's what adults and the media and governments have told them about climate change. That has happened.
But that's the trauma.
As long as we identify where the PTSD is coming from. It's not coming from climate change.
Climate change hasn't hurt them.
It's coming from the fear media who is killing that poor girl's brain. Her amygdala is being blown out of proportion.
Yes, and that trauma has already happened. It's already been blown out of proportion by the media and by governments constantly telling these people, hey, this thing is going to kill you. Just imagine growing up in those circumstances where from the age of 5, you're being told almost daily that this thing is going to kill you. Your entire family and the entire world as you know it. Society is going to collapse. Everyone's going to die. And you hear that, if not daily, at least on a weekly basis. Not to mention how they don't always say it so directly. None of us watch television, but if you watch any of these commercials, they don't say, COVID is going to kill you. Be scared. They're way more subtle than that. They're doing the same thing.
Oh, they say it's going to kill grandma.
Well, commercials don't typically even say that, right? They just
the politicians
we're
do.
all in this. Yes, but I'm talking about the media, not the politicians.
Okay, go ahead.
And the commercials aren't saying, COVID is going to kill you. You have to get vaccinated to be safe. Instead, they're saying, this vaccine will make you safer, like the Sesame Street things. Do something about climate change or it's going to kill you.
Trust me,
they're not stupid. They know they can't just put out commercials on television telling people watching Sesame Street, climate change is going to kill you. They're way more subtle than that.
I don't know what you're not watching TV because definitely there are news pundits and there are politicians and there are celebrities who are saying that COVID is...
You show me a 5-year-old that's watching CNN.
Their teachers who watch these shows are going into the classrooms and telling Greta that it's going to kill them. It's going to kill them.
I don't doubt that teachers are doing that, but that's secondhand. The actual exposure the kids are getting from first-hand information like media sources is just more
from
subtle.
Sesame Street.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Conan.
And I want to talk about the story that I've had for a few days now that we haven't actually gotten to because, I mean, there's... Even getting into this story is going to remove like 10 other things from the table that we could be talking about that are worth talking about. But this one, does anyone remember Sweden and how they chose to handle the COVID-19 quote pandemic by not locking down, not requiring face masks, and not doing anything else that the rest of the world seemed to do?
Yeah, they were the poster child for what not to do for like at least 6 months there, and then all of a sudden you just stopped hearing about them. And it's, by the way, Florida is on that target map as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned Florida because this article also brings up that Florida was inspired by Sweden and the example that they set. So 100 years ago in New York City, 20,000 people marched down Fifth Avenue in protest against one of the greatest public health policy experiments in history.
Is this the measles vaccine?
It doesn't actually... Oh, no, it does say. No. For a year, beer, wine, and spirits had been illegal throughout the United States. From a public health perspective, it seemed a reasonable enough measure. I guess from the point of view of a statist, it
We're
could
talking
be...
about prohibition here?
Yes.
Okay.
From the point of view of a statist, it could, I guess, be seen that way. That alcohol was a dangerous substance was clear. Disease, violence, poverty, and crime were intimately bound up with it. Even now, despite its failure, it is known as the noble experiment. But was it right to prevent people from making drinks that they not only enjoyed, but that also served important cultural and religious purposes?
No.
No. Hell no. Not even if they were to throw the argument in there that it was you were creating lazy, good for nothing riffraff who would be citywide problems and or hurt themselves and kill themselves.
I drink and it doesn't really do any harm to my life.
Well, you have a lot of orderly drunks out there. Yes.
I've never heard anyone call it the noble experiment. It's crazy,
never have either.
is what it is.
Yes, and it didn't work, and it isn't working now because we still have prohibition. It's just not on alcohol.
Oh, no, it's still prohibition on alcohol. Go try to brew your own alcohol and sell it.
You can make your own wine, and you can own a still, but you can't use it.
Yeah.
To make alcohol.
Right. You sure as hell can't sell whatever it is you brew.
No. So yeah, there's prohibition is alive and well in this country.
But you are allowed to consume alcohol, despite it being one of the most dangerous drugs out there.
Sure.
Well, cannabis
unless you're walking down the street, in which case, no, you're not.
And by the way, weed would have been legalized a long time ago if there were more people who liked it compared to the amount of people who like their alcohol.
Well, there were plenty of people. I mean, cocaine became illegal, and like back in the 19th century, people loved cocaine and opium, and they're still illegal today.
Yeah, but then we found out that people of color like that stuff, and it made them into woman terrorizers. And
that's also why cannabis became outlawed.
Exactly.
So not for the first time.
It's all about racism. Good God, man!
Hey, keep that critical race theory out of here, Conan.
No, that is correct. That's exactly what it is.
I know it is.
The whole country's built on racism.
Not for the first time, and that's the point of critical race theory. Yep. But it triggers so many people to just hear that they can't accept it.
I think I don't see any problem with the realization that it's all built on it.
Yeah, and
my question is, it's 2021. This is the best time ever to live as a person of any kind of minority in this country. There's so much diversity. It's such a melting pot. Can you still argue?
It is the best time at any point in history, but that doesn't mean that things are even.
Yeah, we can. There's always a better mousetrap. We can always do better.
Sure.
But is it what it was? Hell no. Are we so? That's the problem with the people who profess who teach this type of nonsense, is that they still treat it like it was 60 years ago. It's not anything like that. Drop it. If you keep talking about it and bringing it up, all you're doing is you're creating division.
Well, it can't be dropped.
It's like you're rubbing salt in the wound.
More than 50% of the American prison population are Black Americans, and they don't represent anywhere near 50% of the American general population. So we can't just pretend like, oh, we defeated racism. It's all in the past now, dude. It's still alive and well. Cannabis is still there. There are white companies. There are companies owned by white people right now that are selling cannabis openly, while Black men are still in prison for never having,
including one of our former presidents, who laughed about taking it and smoking it in college.
Who's that?
Obama.
But I was thinking of Bill Clinton with his whole "I did not inhale" thing.
But he's of a certain class, so I don't. And that's where it's at. It's not about skin
classism,
color.
yeah.
It's about classism. Obama got away with it. I say, here's another person of color, Kamala Harris. She's laughed about it on multiple occasions that she smoked it in college, listening to Dre,
and then put a bunch of people in prison for it.
Yeah.
I
mean,
entirely.
it's classism. It's not race, but yes, there are certain colors in this country that you're definitely going to fall prey a lot easier than certain other skin colors.
There is a lot of overlap between the racism and classism, and the racism has largely morphed into just classism. Classism is far more common today than racism. You're absolutely right. But let's get back to this article. Not for the first time, Americans found themselves torn in a balance between freedom and security. And it wouldn't be the last time. Until recently, prohibition remained the largest experiment in social engineering a democracy had ever undertaken. I don't know where this person is getting their information from. I would suggest the public school system was a much larger social engineering experiment.
But it's still taking place.
Yes.
It's still going.
Well, he doesn't believe that about public schools, though.
Probably not. And then in early 2020, a new virus began to spread from China. Faced with this threat, the world's governments responded by closing schools, banning people from meeting, forcing entrepreneurs to shut down their businesses and making ordinary people wear masks. Like prohibition, this experiment provoked a debate. Well, except one of those sides was told that they were evil and immoral and murderers or manslaughterers, and the other was sanctimonious and self-righteous. In all the democracies of the world, freedom was weighed against what was perceived as security, individual rights versus what was considered best for the public health. Few now remember that for most of 2020, the word experiment had negative connotations. This is what the Swedes were accused of conducting when we, unlike the rest of the world, maintained some semblance of normality.
So this guy's Swedish?
Yes.
Okay.
The citizens of this country generally didn't have to wear face masks. Young children continued to go to school. Leisure activities were largely allowed to continue unhindered. This experiment was judged early on as a disaster by Time magazine, a cautionary tale for the world, according to New York Times, deadly folly by The Guardian. In Germany, Focus magazine described the policy as sloppiness. Italy's La Repubblica concluded that the Nordic model country had made a dangerous mistake.
I like to make a point of correction here. I don't think what they did was an experiment at all. Well, they were just carrying on doing everything normally. The experiment was everybody else.
That's literally the next statement.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So you're on the right track, and that's why I brought this article in, because it makes some excellent point. But these countries, all countries, were also conducting an experiment in that they were testing unprecedented measures to prevent the spread of a virus. Sweden simply chose one path, which, as you point out, was to just carry on like normal.
Yep.
It wasn't about preventing the spread of the virus. That's just what they said. The experiment was to see how far they could put people under total lockdown and control and not have them act out in any significant manner.
To see how many of the sheep would comply with this nonsense.
They literally brought out prison terminology into mainstream view and applied it to everyone. Yes, that's what they tell you in prison when it's time to go back to your cell. And if you don't,
well, I think they succeeded.
I mean, in Australia, they even had yard time.
They sure did.
Didn't they call it that? I don't remember what they called it.
That's what it was.
It was an hour outside per day, but they had to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And they couldn't travel more than some number of kilometers from their homes.
Some of the Australian states are still on lockdown. They are not going to let off. I saw something the other day. I don't remember which province or state it was, but one of them was saying, I think it might have been Queensland, said, we're not going to reopen until 80% of people have 2 shots. And it's hard to get the statistics from Google as far as what the different states have, but the whole country of Australia, it's only like 67% have both shots at this point. So they haven't opened up at all.
So the hypothesis of the outside world was that Sweden's freedom would be costly. The absence of restrictions, open schools, reliance on recommendations instead of mandates, and police enforcement would result in higher deaths than other countries. Meanwhile,
that was the prediction.
Yes.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the lack of freedom endured by the citizens of other countries would, quote, save lives.
Mm-hmm.
Many Swedes were persuaded.
And there's no evidence.
No evidence. In fact, more people are dying. Well, I don't know.
I imagine he's going to get to that.
They do, in fact, get into it. And they don't appear to be having this. There's a surge of hospitalizations from COVID-19 in California, where the vaccination rate is fairly high. But Sweden doesn't seem to be having that issue.
Maybe they've got more natural immunity.
Or Florida, by the way.
Maybe they just didn't lock down and they got the virus and recovered, and now they're just fine. Like, colds happen.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Biden administration is gearing up for a fight over COVID vaccine mandates for large companies. It's filed a case before an appeals court that has temporarily halted the measure. It took just a day and a half for the president's ruling, which compels companies with 100 or more employees to mandate vaccinations or test workers weekly, to be blocked by a federal court. FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organizations have sued, calling the rule issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration an overreach of government authority.
Hong Kong authorities have arrested 3 people on allegations of encouraging the casting of blank votes at the city's upcoming legislative election. The electoral process is facing criticism from democracy activists, with candidates required to pass a vetting process before being allowed to stand. FSN's Richard Kimber reports from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's Independent Commission Against Corruption says the 3 people arrested are suspected of sharing an online message calling on the public to cast blank votes at next month's Legislative Council polls. Hong Kong's election laws ban the incitement of others not to vote or to cast an invalid vote during the voting period. The maximum penalty for breaking those laws is 3 years in jail and a $25,000 fine. Security officials are warning the public not to meddle in the electoral process, which is facing widespread criticism from democracy activists after Beijing imposed new rules to require all candidates to be vetted for their patriotic values before being allowed to stand. The government says despite those rules, there is still room for opposition voices in the legislature.
The S&P has snapped an 8-day hot streak with inflation data dominating investor sentiment. And Tesla's shares fall again as traders react to a social media poll conducted by its founder, Elon Musk. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Strong earnings, better than expected jobs figures, and the passing of an infrastructure bill helped propel the US markets into record territory over recent days. But that winning run came to an end Tuesday, thanks, in part, to inflation concerns. October's producer price index ticked up 0.6% month over month. The Dow closed down 0.3% Tuesday, the S&P 0.4%, and the Nasdaq fell 0.6%. Tesla closed the day down 12% as Wall Street reacts to CEO Elon Musk's move over the weekend to conduct a Twitter poll over whether he should sell 10% of his stock.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the clarion warning issued on Monday by the World Food Programme, predicting an imminent catastrophe in Afghanistan. David Beasley, the head of the WFP, said the country is on the brink of the worst humanitarian situation on Earth, with 23 million people inexorably heading towards starvation. It will, he said, be hell. Shelley Thakral of the World Food Programme expanded on what her boss had to say about the urgent need for international support.
He spoke so passionately and said, shame on you, world. Shame on you, world, for all the billions of the trillions of money that we have. And yet, children, you're seeing children who are starving, who are undernourished, who are underweight even families who've had to sell children. I have no words for it. The desperation is that we need money. We need $220 million a month to feed people until the end of the year. And then 2022, we take stock.
The crisis has been sparked not just by political uncertainty with the Taliban back in charge, but by Afghanistan's recent drought and its impending winter. Since the fall of the government headed by President Ashraf Ghani, many Western nations have suspended aid operations in Afghanistan, but the WFP says that is no longer an option if disaster is to be averted. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The Biden administration gears up for a fight over COVID-19 vaccine mandates for large companies after a federal court blocks the president's ruling. Hong Kong authorities arrest 3 people on allegations of encouraging the casting of blank votes at the city's upcoming legislative election. And Tesla's shares fall again as traders react to Elon Musk's social media poll. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
For those hoping to get ahead of the work week, look no further than Overtime Plus, a new app that lets you work for your company even while you sleep. The app keeps you trapped in a constant half-awake, half-dream state where your thoughts are never far from the drudgeries of the work week. By simply laying your phone on your mattress, the app's accelerometers are able to measure your movements throughout the night, so it knows when you're close to falling into a deep sleep and losing focus of the crushing work demands ahead of you. When restful sleep is detected, the app dips into your personalized work tasks to generate a subliminal signal, like the date of an important deadline or keywords from the most damning portion of your last job review to jostle you back into a state of productive, semi-awake agitation.
I was close to falling asleep last night, then my app started whispering my boss's name over and over again until I was awake and answering work emails at 3 in the morning.
Last night it made me dream that I was locked in the office until I could find the most optimal way to catalog the company's new server. I still haven't figured it out.
The app doesn't just keep you mentally shackled to your day job, but also serves as an alarm clock by repeatedly shouting you're late for work until you're jolted out of bed in a panic each morning.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about Sweden here, but there's a lot to be said about this pandemic that we're, 19, 20, 21 months into at this point, officially?
Pandemic. I'm putting quotes around that.
The libertarians here in Keene are one of the best case studies that I can think of how to properly handle COVID-19. Because
you mean throw a party every week?
Yeah, because if all of the fear-mongering was true, right, every single one of us would be dead by now.
Or at least we'd know somebody who was.
Well, you do know a few people. Well, I know of a person who died from COVID-19. And one of our
listeners.
Gene? No, I meant my sister's ex-husband's father. So
you know him personally?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I mean, back when I lived in Mississippi. I mean, he was...
How old was he when he died?
Old.
Was he fat?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I'm not so sure he died of COVID then.
You know what, Ian? What you just did is something that I have developed, especially this past year, is that anybody dies. Anybody. Colin Powell just died. The first thing I asked.
How old was he?
How old was he?
84.
Was he fat and was he vaccinated?
He was.
And he was. He was all three of those things.
Yeah.
And I wish I could, because we see the obituaries here, and if you follow the social media here in the area, the local obituaries are always coming past, and people are like, oh, God, love and light and all this, and the first thing I always want to ask, was he vaccinated?
I don't know if this guy was vaccinated.
I could see from the picture that they were fat. Were they also vaccinated? Because that's not being asked, because before they did it in reverse. They're still doing it in reverse, where they're like, and they were unvaccinated, and this certain amount of people who just died this week, and 15% of them, 30% of them were unvaccinated. But I don't care about that anymore.
I don't care if they're unvaccinated or vaccinated. It means nothing to me.
I think it's very important that we understand the adverse reactions from this vaccine. I think it's very important. But these news organizations
because I have no intention of getting the vaccine one way or the other. It doesn't matter to me what the adverse reactions are. I'm not getting it.
We've already made our decision. I want the people who've taken this or plan on maybe giving it to their kids.
That's so horrifying.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at now. But we're not getting this information. We're not hearing about the adverse reactions unless you go to alt media like this station and or some of the YouTube dudes. Or sometimes you can't even get that anymore because they're protecting their bases so often they don't really say anything. So now you got to go to Odyssey or you got to go to BitChute or
Well, these are all better places than YouTube anyway.
This is true.
But to circle back, I mean, the guy who we're talking about, he was very overweight, diabetic. His doctor at one point told him, hey, you have to stop eating Burger King for breakfast every single day or you're going to die. And his solution, no joke, his solution to that was to make the exact same breakfast, but at home. So learn nothing, right? And he was the kind of person who expected a doctor to be able to just give him a pill and make his diabetes go away.
Oh man,
that's this whole country. That's Big Pharma. That's why Big Pharma owns every ad and every news station you're watching right now. If anyone you watch the news on TV, it's Big Pharma this, Big Pharma that. They own everything.
Didn't Pfizer CEO come out and say that it's a criminal act to misinform people about their quote unquote science?
He did. Yeah. I also have that story.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, the libertarians here in Keene, none of us got vaccinated. We didn't wear masks. We didn't social distance. We threw parties every week. You threw a massive New Year's Eve party where at least 70 to 80
at least
people
70 I counted at one point.
Ended up coming through, and I was there at the door. I greeted every single one of these people. Yep. I had COVID-19, recovered from it. A few other people here in the movement have had COVID-19 and recovered from it. None of us died. But if the fear-mongering was true, we would all be dead, and Sweden would be a crater in the earth.
A smoking crater.
But Sweden is doing just fine, and all of the people here at Free Talk Live are still doing just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But many Swedes were persuaded by the hypothesis that the lack of freedom endured by the citizens of other countries would save lives. Shut down Sweden to protect the country, wrote one author, perhaps the country's most powerful journalist. Renowned infectious disease experts, microbiologists, and epidemiologists from all over the country warned of the consequences of the government's policy. One model, powered by supercomputers, predicted 96,000 Swedes would die before the summer of 2020.
Yeah, what these supercomputers are also doing? They're also predicting the climate change, the climate models that are always wrong.
Well, the models are only as good as the data put into it. If you put in garbage stuff, you're going to get garbage out.
The last time I heard, the Russian model is actually pretty decent because it's like the only one that doesn't predict we're going to be dead in 20 years, 15 years, or whatever that number is. That doesn't mean it's any more
accurate. It just means they put different data in to get whatever different results they wanted.
So how many people actually died by the summer of 2020?
It doesn't actually say. But at that stage, it was not unreasonable to conclude that Sweden would pay a high price for its freedom. But throughout the spring of 2020, Sweden's death toll per capita was higher than most other countries. But the experiment didn't end there. During the year that followed, the virus continued to ravage the world, and one by one, the death tolls in countries that had lockdown began to surpass Sweden. Britain, the U.S., France, Poland, and many other countries that had variously shut down playgrounds, forced their children to wear face masks, closed schools, fined citizens for hanging out on the beach, and guarded parks with drones have all been hit worse than Sweden. At the time of writing, more than 50 countries have a higher death rate. If you measure excess mortality for the whole of 2020, Sweden will end up in 21st place out of 31 European countries. If Sweden was a part of the United States, its death rate would rank number 43 of the 50 states.
Interesting.
The fact is shockingly underreported, considering the sheer number of articles and TV segments devoted to Sweden's foolishly liberal attitude to the pandemic and the daily reference to figures that are forgotten today. Suddenly, it's as if Sweden doesn't exist. When the Wall Street Journal recently published a report from Portugal, it described how the country, quote, offered a glimpse of what it would be like to live with the virus. This new normal involved, among other things, vaccine passports and face masks at large events like football matches. Nowhere in the report was it mentioned that in Sweden you can go to football matches without wearing a face mask, or that Sweden, with a smaller proportional of COVID deaths over the course of the pandemic, had ended virtually all restrictions. Sweden has been living with the virus for some time. The Wall Street Journal is far from alone in its selective reporting. The New York Times, Guardian, BBC, The Times, they were all cheerleaders for lockdowns and can't fathom that casting doubt on their efficacy, even though, as The numbers here show there is no evidence to suggest that lockdowns and face masks did anything to prevent the deaths of COVID-19.
To the contrary.
Yes, it seems that Sweden did better than most of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine the ones that did better
probably were the states with very low population, like densities, like South Dakota and those other places out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those who follow Sweden's example have also come in for a lot of criticism. When the state of Florida, more than a year ago and strongly inspired by Sweden, removed most of its restrictions, the judgment from the American media was swift. The state's Republican governor
it's
was
still being dished out against Florida, yeah.
The Republican governor was predicted to, quote, lead his state to the morgue. The media was outraged by images of Floridians swimming and sunbathing at the beach.
Oh, the horror.
Their governor's counterpart in New York, the embattled Democrat Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, was offered a book deal for his leadership lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic. Cuomo, who killed a bunch of old people from sending COVID patients to nursing homes or something like that. A few months ago, he was forced to resign after harassing a dozen women.
Yeah, that wasn't it. They had to get him out of there to protect his butt because he killed thousands of old people.
He was never going to be held accountable for that. But the result of his leadership lesson lives on. 0.29% of his state's residents died of COVID-19, the equivalent figure for Florida, the state that not only allowed the most freedom but also has the second highest proportion of pensioners in the country, is 0.27%. So slightly fewer people died in Florida, where there are a bunch of old retired people.
From New York, by the way.
Are they from New York?
There's a ton of people on the west coast of Florida that retired from New York.
So it doesn't appear lockdowns did anything to help anyone, and they shut down the world economy. And as a result of that, there are shipping containers you can't find turkey this year for Thanksgiving. So well done, government, for destroying the world economy. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can join us. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Conan.
And if you care about individual liberty, you should get up to New Hampshire, where the legislative branch in New Hampshire actually passed a law saying that government agencies cannot require vaccines of people. And one of the most obvious effects of this, which was one I hadn't considered, was that schools and public schools and universities and colleges wouldn't be able to require their students to be vaccinated in order to attend.
Unfortunately, they are still doing mask mandates at some of these schools.
I would like the maybe there's something in the LSR, that's the list of bills that have been proposed in New Hampshire that are about to get, official bill numbers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something in there about not being able to require masks either.
That'd be nice.
Or get your kids out of the school.
That's the best thing you can do.
And now that we have this school voucher thing has gone through, is it a part of the budget now? You might actually get paid to take your kids out of school and do something else with them.
I think they call them educational savings accounts.
Basically, what they're doing is they're taking the money that they would otherwise use to put your kid through public school, and they're giving that to the parents directly, if you so choose, to seek alternative education options for your children.
Which is only with the sad part about it, it's only like 4,000 or 5,000 from the state. Whereas then the rest is coming from your local budget, which is just it's crazy. It's crazy huge. So are you going to be able to fill in the gaps? Is 5,000 going to be enough to educate your kid? I'm wondering.
5,000
it will
per
be in the
year?
market. Yeah, in the free market.
In the free market. And the other question is, will this follow homeschoolers? Which would also be really nice.
I believe it does.
All right, now we're talking.
But I can't speak for sure. What I could say, though, is that apparently they're called education freedom accounts, so not savings, but education freedom accounts, and you can learn more about it at educationfreedomnh.org. They had a very nice-looking, well-designed website with details about it.
Awesome. So New Hampshire is a place you should be if you value individual liberty at the very least.
Correct.
Because we're not seeing that in other places, like in San Francisco.
No, that would be one of the least free places in the United States. Oakland, reporting for Politico.com, Victoria Culliver writing that San Francisco will soon require children as young as 5 years old to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination to enter certain indoor spaces, like restaurants, entertainment venues, and sporting events, say public health officials last week. The local mandate already requires children and adults over the age of 12 to show proof they are vaccinated before entering those places. And now city health officials are planning to extend the health order to children ages 5 to 11, which is now the group that has been recently approved by the federal government to be getting these experimental mRNA vaccinations.
Papers, please.
So it wasn't enough to propagandize the parents to the point that they wanted to get their children vaccinated or jabbed with these experimental mRNA gene therapies, they had to actually go and mandate it.
It's part of the program. This is
stupid. If it worked and it was a good idea, you wouldn't have to mandate it.
No. But this is not what it's about.
People like us would be dropping dead in the streets.
It's about the tracking system. It's about getting you tracked. Everything about you. It's going to be your credit score soon. It's going to be your bank account.
Yeah, and it's about training these kids.
It's not just going to be your vaccine card. Yeah, and it's about training them early.
Yeah,
the same way they did in this country with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right.
The same thing they did with the flag, bowing to the flag. They got them young.
Right.
They got the Boy Scouts first, and then because after the Civil War. There were so many people in this country that were upset with government.
They're training these kids that it will now be normal. It will be expected of them to carry the papers with them and then show them on every entrance to every business that they'll want to go to. Anything that is an entertainment venue, any restaurant, any place you want to take your kids to go out to, they're going to have this mandate that they have to show. Now, technically, they don't have identification per se yet. That's not happened yet. They actually do address that in this story because remember, the other side of the vaccination cards, the vaccination passport things, is that the vaccination passport doesn't have your photo on it. So therefore, you're also required as an adult to show ID. That they don't usually talk about that in the news stories about this. So it's like a double identification that you have to show, because otherwise, if Conan has got the card, he could just give it to me, and then I could be Conan for the day if I need to go shopping. Right?
Or you can buy some off of eBay.
Yeah, so that's why they're requiring people to show ID. So they have to show two forms of ID: the vaccination card and their ID.
Yeah,
but children don't have IDs.
And that's to get a Happy Meal from McDonald's.
This is why you have so many municipalities. New York is a prime example where they want to digitize all this. They want an app. They want it on your phone, so that they want accredited and/or governmental agencies administering these passports. Not just your doctor. They're going to turn this. There's going to be a new line at the driver's department,
the DMV,
where there's another option. Or guess what? I was hearing earlier this year that they might want to set this up at the post office. The vaccine line. I haven't heard any word since that came across our table almost a year ago, but they were in the works of moving a vaccine passport department into every post office in the country.
The San Francisco health bureaucrats said this, quote, "As with children 12 to 17 who may not have personal identification, we will follow the same approach with the younger kids such that they would not be penalized for not having an ID." So they're going to be a little nicer to the children. They're not going to ticket the kids if they don't have an ID for now. But how long is it going to be before some parent walks in there and they've got a bunch of kids and their younger kid hasn't gotten the vaccine or whatever, so they use their older kid's vaccine card for their younger kid or whatever, right? Like they're switching cards around because they don't have to show ID. Somebody gets caught, and then some state legislature, because eventually we're going to see states mandating this, right? Like that hasn't happened yet.
Maybe some states like California.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, state California. There's rumors that New Jersey's governor was waiting till he got reelected, and he did, to put it in place in New Jersey as a statewide mandate. So once this goes in as a
statewide vaccine,
once it goes in as a statewide mandate, then they're going to say, all right, we can't be having parents switching people's cards. Not only are we going to punish you for it if we catch you doing it, which is obviously what they're going to do, but they're going to just start issuing kids identification, I think. I mean, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
If they can do it, if they can get away with it, they're going to do all that they can.
They've already got the kids going to their government schools. They probably have government ID cards for the kids at school, right? Like, I remember when I was in school in the 1990s and they started, creating these things. I don't think they quite rolled them out in any meaningful sense. Like, I don't think there was photos on the IDs, but I've heard that nowadays they've got RFID chips in the government school IDs for kids, and they have to wear them around their neck as they're going into classrooms, and they've got their photos on them. So, I mean, they're already taking pictures of these kids every single year at the schools. It's just, one step more to say, all right, now here's your license.
Did I tell
ID
you
card.
when I found out my 7th grader, my daughter, I was taking her to, this is Clarksville, Tennessee. And I was taking her to school. She was late. She overslept. I took her into the office, and I'm like, all right, what do I need to sign? Because he's like, send her off to the class. And I'm like, all right, what do I need to sign? I'm like, oh, no, we just take their fingerprint. And she put her thumb down on a little pad right there at the office and signed into school. This was 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
It's going to get worse. We're going to talk more about how they're conditioning kids to accept things that honestly the Nazi Germans kind of did.
And now, time for something totally different. Intercoin is a project that's working to make crypto mainstream. We use the power of smart contracts to help any community in the world launch their own cryptocurrency. Ever wanted to release your own coin or build your own app to grow your business? Intercoin's team builds apps that have reached 9 million people around the world. And now it's time to help make a real social impact in your local community. Go to intercoin.org and join the movement. That's intercoin.org.
You know, when we first started Intercoin about 3 years ago, we had a big vision to help every community in the world have access to the same tools that large states and federations do, to hold local elections on the blockchain, to have their own local currency, shop local, hire local, and help fight the forces of globalization that have decimated some of these communities.
Go to intercoin.org and join the movement.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Biden administration is gearing up for a fight over COVID vaccine mandates for large companies. It's filed a case before an appeals court that has temporarily halted the measure. It took just a day and a half for the president's ruling, which compels companies with 100 or more employees to mandate vaccinations or test workers weekly, to be blocked by a federal court. FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
The vaccine or test rule covers 84 million American workers. In a court filing, government lawyers said that preventing the mandate from coming into effect would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. More than 24 states, businesses, business groups and religious organizations have sued, calling the rule, issued by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, an overreach of government authority.
Hong Kong authorities have arrested 3 people on allegations of encouraging the casting of blank votes at the city's upcoming legislative election. The electoral process is facing criticism from democracy activists, with candidates required to pass a vetting process before being allowed to stand. FSN's Richard Kimber reports from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's Independent Commission Against Corruption says the 3 people arrested are suspected of sharing an online message calling on the public to cast blank votes at next month's Legislative Council polls. Hong Kong's election laws ban the incitement of others not to vote or to cast an invalid vote during the voting period. The maximum penalty for breaking those laws is 3 years in jail and a $25,000 fine. Security officials are warning the public not to meddle in the electoral process, which is facing widespread criticism from democracy activists after Beijing imposed new rules to require all candidates to be vetted for their patriotic values before being allowed to stand. The government says despite those rules, there is still room for opposition voices in the legislature.
The S&P has snapped an 8-day hot streak with inflation data dominating investor sentiment. And Tesla's shares fall again as traders react to a social media poll conducted by its founder, Elon Musk. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Strong earnings, better than expected jobs figures, and the passing of an infrastructure bill helped propel the US markets into record territory over recent days. But that winning run came to an end Tuesday, thanks, in part, to inflation concerns. October's producer price index ticked up 0.6% month over month. The Dow closed down 0.3% Tuesday, the S&P 0.4%, and the Nasdaq fell 0.6%. Tesla closed the day down 12% as Wall Street reacts to CEO Elon Musk's move over the weekend to conduct a Twitter poll over whether he should sell 10% of his stock.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And this may not come as a surprise for people, but evidently when you put people out of work for extended periods of time and you crash an economy, people turn to debt as a way of carrying on their lifestyles. And Americans have always sort of had an addiction to debt anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that's what we learn from a very young age, that debt is all right.
But it isn't.
It isn't.
But most Americans, you're right, don't believe that way. I mean, I think it's half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
I think it's more than that.
And they also have massive amounts of debt.
But the craziest part about it is it's not just poor people. It's not just lower class people who are in debt.
Half of Americans.
It's, there's plenty of richers out there, plenty of doctors and lawyers and the whole nine.
They spend beyond what their income is.
So and then what happens? Everyone's living in debt. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden you don't have a job anymore, or one of your, or it's only one of you working,
and that just means more debt. And because of all of this, Americans now have record amounts of debt. This is not America, the United States, which also has a record amount of debt, but American households are carrying record amounts of debt as home and auto prices surge, COVID infections continue to fall, and people get out their credit cards again.
Wasn't MSNBC just publishing an article the other day about how inflation is great and that Americans are flush with cash and there's so many jobs?
Thank goodness for all this useless paper.
They took that tweet down quick, Ian. They got so much backlash from that stupid statement.
Did they really?
Yeah,
I heard they changed the title of the article.
It was. I don't know that it was an article. That was just a tweet.
An article.
Between July and September, U.S. household debt climbed to a new record of $15.24 trillion, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York said Tuesday. I can't do that math that quickly, but 6 billion people, $15.24 trillion in debt.
Wait, this was the United States, right?
No, this is U.S. household debt.
You said 6 billion.
So 340,000?
Oh, that's right. There are fewer households, yeah.
There's only 300 million people.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
you're thinking world population.
Yes, I was. And it's not even 6 billion anymore. God,
so 340 million Americans, but it said households, right?
Yeah, which is probably
estimated
122
million households as of 2019. So what was it? 15 trillion?
Yeah, let's go with that. 15 trillion. I don't know how I ended up citing the world population from like 2004, because it's certainly higher now. I think it's past 7 billion.
Yeah.
But in America, it's like 320,000, 300.
Unless Bill Gates gets his way, he's working on that number.
Believe it or not, this is only an increase of 1.9%. Or $286 billion from the second quarter of the year. Well, that's $286 billion more debt in a single quarter.
That's an average of $122,000 or $123,000 per household in debt.
Lord.
If I've got all my zeros correct here.
As pandemic relief efforts wind down, we are beginning to see the reversal of some of the credit card balance trends seen during the pandemic, such as lower spending in favor of paying down debt balances, said a research officer at the New York Fed. And it's really not clear what he meant by that. Now that the stimulus sugar rush has worn off, I saw someone post today that
lower spending as opposed to paying down debt balances. So people are trying to pay off their debts. Is what he said there. Instead of buying stuff.
And that was the lockdown did that?
Well, the government did that, yeah.
Yeah, it depends who you ask. I mean, some people say the lockdown changed spending habits. Like people were more likely to spend on home improvements than whatever their other habits were.
If you've seen our Home Depot here, yeah. But and I, the delivery guy, I can attest. The spending did not fall in that category, and it went up immensely. And I'm already starting to see it go up as we speak. So I know. So they might not be going to the Walmart to spend it, but they're definitely doing it online, and I'm delivering it.
Yeah, and the pandemic relief efforts are the ultimate cause of this. I saw someone posted today. Someone did the numbers, and with the rise in prices, that $2,000 that we got in stimulus check, it basically buys what $5,000 would have bought prior to the stimulus checks. I don't remember exactly how they came up with that math, but the result is that unless you took that $2,000 and invested it in something
like crypto,
like crypto,
Bitcoin,
or Bitcoin, or maybe even gold. I don't know what gold is doing.
Gold's kind of just
real estate, and
well, you can't invest $2,000 in real estate,
and you can buy a nice car or something, automobile.
It's not an investment.
Or a timeshare.
It's an investment now if you turn around selling it.
It's a liability.
True.
At any rate,
I mean, if you need to get to work,
but you can't you can't buy an entire property with $2,000, but you can put it with another $99,000 that's in your bank account that you don't actually have, because I just made that up because we're all in debt. We don't own any. There's nothing in our bank accounts.
That's true for most people, certainly. So now that the stimulus sugar rush has worn off, consumers are going back to their old ways of spending with their credit cards. Credit card balances rose by $17 billion, just as they had during the second quarter. But they're still $123 billion lower than the end of 2019 before the pandemic hit. Auto loans and student loans balances also increased, rising by $28 billion and $14 billion. So just across the board, Americans are spending big at the moment. Well, they're not really spending big. Their currency is just more useless. So it seems like they're spending
There's more
big.
zeros.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be a millionaire soon.
They're richer. Just add some more zeros to all of the notes and everyone's wealthier. Instead of a $1 bill, we have a $1 trillion bill.
It can't happen here, Arya.
But that's the obvious solution. That will fix everything, because then you make the entire population not just trillionaires, but multi-gazillionaires.
Yeah, what comes after trillion?
We're laughing at this, but we just talked about this. There was a mainstream news operation who said it out loud that this inflation is actually good for you.
Oh, yeah, and they're not the first one. I've seen more than one story about
that. The AOCs of this world believe in this type of economics.
Inflation is sitting at multi-year highs, thanks to supply chain disruptions.
No, that's not what inflation is. But that's typical for the media. They always say inflation is a rise in prices, and the reality is inflation is an increase in the money supply, and the government ain't slowing down at that.
Nope.
They just passed a new $1 trillion+ infrastructure bill.
Did they finally pass that nonsense?
They did, yeah. Now it's down from $3.5 trillion. So we're cutting back.
I don't care about that. I mean, they're going to inflate the currency, and
they sure are.
And I don't care, but I don't like the crypto regulations that they worked into it in the Senate.
And those are there.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. The latest inflation data from early Tuesday showed prices producers received for their products rose 0.6% in October. Now, I know a guy who owns a convenience store. 0.6% is not accurate for the product price increases.
Well, that's just in 1 month they're talking about there.
Oh, that is just 1 month, yeah.
Yeah. AP report here says inflation at the wholesale level rose 8.6% last month from a year earlier, matching September's record annual gain and offering more evidence that inflationary pressures are not yet easing. So this is the producer price index. Now, here's the number you're talking about. The Labor Department reported its producer price index, which measures inflation before it hits consumers, rose 0.6% last month from September, pushed higher by surging gasoline prices. So I think that means it's 0.6 higher than what September's was. So therefore, if September was 8%, this would be 8.6%. That's my reading of this. Either way, the reports are that these are record levels of producer
that's almost
price increases.
I mean, that's
and they're just claiming because of gas increases. That's their only.
That's what they claim.
And that's almost 10% versus last year. 10% increase in prices, almost.
But you have to understand, the media will never say this is because the government is printing money. They always have to come up with some other reason for it. Of course, why is the price of gas going up? Well, probably because they're printing money. That's one reason, beyond regulations and all the other BS.
And then you have
factors.
Biden the other day, his explanation was people are getting sick. They're getting COVID and they can't go to work.
That's why gas is up?
That's why everything, that's why inflation.
That's such nonsense, man. And, you know,
it is.
I've heard that before.
This is Biden. I mean...
But it's clearly not the case.
No.
We didn't lose the workforce from COVID-19. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and I want to say thank you to Tim, who is tonight's amplifier. This means that Tim is a member of the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Stands for advertise, market, promote, and support. So if you value the show, if you want to show your support, help us get on more radio stations, get more podcast listeners, all of that great stuff, the AMP program or the AMPS program is the best way to do that. It's on Patreon now. So it's super easy to join. You probably already have a Patreon account, so just give us a look. All it takes is $5 per month. That gets you in. And it comes with a number of cool little features, like there's an AMP-only Facebook group that I don't think anyone has asked to join in a very long time, because we constantly tell our listeners not to be on Facebook, presumably. But there's also an AMP-only chat on our official server.
That's
so
right.
Check it out at amps.freetalklive.com if you like the show. So thank you so much, Tim. And we hope you continue supporting us. So we're talking about the economy here and the massive devastation we're seeing. My family, I found out, is having a Thanksgiving dinner, but they're unable to even find a turkey where they live.
So they're going ham?
I don't know what they're doing. I don't care what they're doing. I just know that I was half invited to a turkey-less Thanksgiving.
Wasn't this the same family that was like masks mandatory last year for Thanksgiving?
I don't remember if masks were mandatory, but I remember they definitely social distanced. And I think there were people wearing masks. I don't remember now. But
I remember you were not interested in that last year.
Even if COVID wasn't a thing, I still wouldn't go. Got way better things to do.
Well, I was at one of the grocery stores here in town last week, and they had two large chest freezers full of turkeys. And I'm like, oh, okay, plenty of meat, plenty of turkeys here. I went back this week, all gone.
I didn't even see them, so I wasn't even
all gone and replaced with nothing. The two freezers were just sitting there completely empty.
Wow.
Now this far out, that's unreal. But I mean, typically this is the way that it works.
Expect on like November 22nd.
The week before,
right.
You want to start seeing those freezers start to empty out. There's a reason for that. The grocery store doesn't want to hold on to those things.
They
want to get rid of them.
To slash their prices.
But almost 3 weeks out.
Yeah, that's weird, man.
It's not weird. We see it.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Well, we've talked about the supply chain issues that have a lot to do with government regulations on the trucking industry, specifically California, where now you can't even operate an older truck, apparently. Like, they've got certain regulations that keep a lot of trucks out of the state.
Oh, that's sure to help with the shipping problem.
And then there's the backup of the cargo ships off of the coast of California. And the guy that we talked to about that said, or the article we were reading, said there was one truck for every 14 shipping containers, I believe, that are being offloaded
19.
at the port or something like that. So there's nowhere near enough trucks to take these containers away, even if they could move all those ships out and get the containers off of them. So
it's
problems.
fine. Biden has a plan. He's going to find those cargo containers every single day that they're out there.
I heard about that.
That'll fix it. Right.
It's certainly going to turn them away and make them never come back, I guess.
I'm being facetious, of course. That is not going to fix it.
The cargo container overload.
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason? There are not enough. All right, so there's not enough truckers, but why?
Not enough truckers.
Is it because of vaccine mandates?
That's one thing I think that's keeping some truckers out. I imagine some of them just walked away from the job or whatever. Plus the ports themselves, they don't have probably enough staff to keep this thing rolling. Also, government. These ports are run by governments, and so the port workers are all union. And so there's actually a whole other article I've had in show prep, which we're not going to get to tonight, but there's a whole story about Foundation of Economic Education, Biden thanking the unions for promising to help solve a supply chain mess they created, where basically the unions, they're like, well, it's 5 o'clock. We're done for the day. See ya. And then, or whatever time, like 8 p.m. or whenever, they close down the port for several hours in the overnight when they could be, moving freight.
Wasn't DeSantis talking about?
And they close it on the weekends.
Exactly. It should be 24/7. That way, these things are operating.
Well, that's what Biden. That was the big thing Biden brought to the table. Is like, all right, here's how we're going to fix it. We're going to make it 24/7. Like, here we are in 2021, and now they're finally talking about making these ports, these mega ports in Los Angeles and the other one, wherever that is, Long Beach or something, into 24/7 operations. But then the point was, even if they were 24/7, they couldn't move them onto the trucks fast enough.
These unions, man, they're too much. They're too much work these days. There's
also the reality, as you said, Americans are buying more stuff than ever,
and getting into credit card
debt. Least online, yeah.
And so that's coming from overseas.
Well, we need to. I thought DeSantis was talking about opening a Florida port.
They have Florida ports, and yes, he did.
Really ramping it up, and 24/7 as well. Because I mean, this is the free market could work this out.
It could, if it were a free market.
If it were allowed to work.
If it were market-owned ports instead of government-run operations. So we got a mess out there, and on top of that, you've got the federal government printing up trillions of dollars, right? And so, of course, none of these news stories admit or point out that that's why inflation happens. But here we are with the Wall Street Journal, since we were talking about the record level wholesale price increases of over 8.6% or something like that in recent months. Confident consumers, they say here, have swallowed higher supermarket prices so far this year, but the risk of indigestion is growing. For companies that make staple goods, asking for more money is delicate. Recently, this was late October when this was published, the world's biggest food company, Nestle, said sales increased by an impressive 6.5% in the third quarter compared with the same period last year. Demand for their products is strong, and Nestle's been able to pass on the higher cost of inputs such as plastic and transport to their shoppers, a sign of healthy pricing power. Company shares are up 3% in early trading, but their cost of goods will increase by around 4% this year, they said, meaning they will shell out an extra 1.8 billion Swiss francs, because they're an international company, equivalent to $1.95 billion on everything from packaging to trucking. Danone, yogurt maker Danone, said Tuesday that its input costs will be 8% higher this year. The difference can probably be explained by what the two companies sell. Nestle's got a big coffee business where hedges have protected it from spiraling commodity costs, although these will roll off soon. Inflation is now so hot that staples companies feel they have no option but to pass the costs on. These companies, like Nestle and Procter & Gamble, said recently that consumers can expect higher bills at the grocery store. The question is, how far can they push before shoppers defect to cheaper brands or buy fewer items? As a rule of thumb, price increases above 5% are harder to implement without changing buying patterns, according to supermarket and consumer goods executives.
And now they sort of have to raise them more than 5%.
I mean, if your costs are up 8%, you can't eat those losses for very long.
Yeah, I think I can't find the article, but I heard that Nestle is not even going to advertise this quarter.
Why should they? Everybody knows their brands.
Well, this is true, but that's a lot of money right there. So they might be able to make some of it up just dropping their advertising.
There are caveats. Companies that make more premium brands, such as Nestle's Nespresso coffee, have extra wiggle room, and consumers are less reactive to price changes in some countries than others. But still, the inflation is approaching more sensitive levels in the U.S., where prices for food consumed in the home increased 4.5% in September compared with the same month of 2020. In the euro area, prices for food, alcohol, and tobacco were just 2% higher, according to Eurostat. But is that the reality at the store? Is that what people are actually experiencing? These are just averages. Like, some people have seen milk go up $1 per gallon, right?
That's basically all I buy. And I was surprised the other day going in there, and it's almost $1.20, $1.30 more than it was, 3 or 4 months ago.
That's surprising, because one of the things I learned about New Hampshire when I first got here was just how cheap the milk is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to
like $1.50.
Yeah, I'm used to like $4 a gallon, in Mississippi or whatever. But here it was like $1.30 for a gallon.
Yeah, all dairy's up, eggs are up, cheese is up,
meat
is way up.
Nestle recently increased prices by 5% in the U.S., but this is still in negotiations with supermarkets on the other side of the Atlantic. Europeans can expect to pay more from the beginning of 2022. Staples companies have ways to shield shoppers from the full impact of rising commodity costs by running factories more efficiently. For example, consumers have also accumulated savings during the pandemic, which is contrary to what we were just talking about a moment ago.
Yeah,
where
it sounds like the opposite is true.
Record debt. So they say some might be willing to pay more than they usually would, but bosses at consumer goods manufacturers expect more increases in costs next year.
Hey, but Ian, it's all going to work out, because they're going to start unrolling all the bug flour. And
bug flour
and the man-made
the
lab grown
peanut butter or whatever it was we were talking about,
and the lab grown meat, which they're unrolling as we speak. And you're gonna love it. You're not gonna own a damn thing, and you're gonna lap up your bug burger, and you're gonna love it.
See, I'm okay with the lab grown meat.
That's fine.
I'm not.
But the bugs, yeah. Well, see, the lab grown, you can eat it without something having to die. And to me, that's a net positive.
If they can do it cheaper, what's wrong with it?
If it ain't natural, I don't want no part of it.
It's natural because humans are natural. Therefore, anything we create is natural.
Anyway, price is going up.
Join us in the meantime over on our chat server at chat.freetalklive.com. We'll be back same time tomorrow.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and